She hugged the wrong man at the airport and ended up in a millionaire's arms. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. The morning alarm shattered the silence at 4:45 a.m., a sound Milena Carter had learned to hate less than being late. Her fingers found the phone in the dark, muscle memory from 1,000 identical mornings. The dim light from the screen illuminated the exhaustion etched across her face, highlighting dark circles under eyes that had seen too many early mornings and late nights. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, a daily mantra that kept her moving forward. The wooden floor creaked beneath her feet as she made her way to Luca's room, each step carefully placed to maintain the precious minutes of silence before their day began. Her son lay curled in his bed, star-patterned blanket wrapped tight around his small frame. Luca's world operated on precise routines, and waking him even 5 minutes early could derail their entire morning. Milena watched him sleep, allowing herself 30 seconds, counted in her head, to simply exist in this moment of peace. "Time to wake up, baby," she called softly, flicking on his dinosaur nightlight rather than the harsh overhead lamp. Luca stirred, his eyes opening with the careful deliberation that marked all his movements. No sudden changes, no unexpected shifts. The morning routine unfolded like a well-rehearsed dance. Luca's blue cup filled exactly 3/4 with apple juice, his breakfast arranged in perfect triangles, clothes laid out in the exact order he would put them on. Milena moved through these motions while simultaneously preparing herself for work, her own breakfast forgotten in the rush. "Mrs. Henderson will pick you up for school today," she reminded him, watching his face for any sign of distress at the change in routine. "Remember, we talked about this yesterday. Mommy has to work at the clinic, then go to the airport to pick up Uncle Drew." Luca aligned his fork perfectly parallel to his plate, his way of showing he understood. Sometimes Milena wished she could step into his world, see how he processed everything around him. But for now, she had to trust the small signs he gave her, the subtle ways he communicated his understanding. The morning passed in its usual blur of activity, dropping Luca at Mrs. Henderson's, catching the 6:15 bus to the clinic, processing patients with a smile that hid her bone-deep fatigue. By the time her shift ended at 4 p.m., Milena's feet ached in her sensible shoes, and her mind was already racing ahead to her evening shift at the airport cafe. The text from her brother came just as she was clocking out, landing at 6:30, gate B12. "Miss you, sis." Drew was the only one who still called her sis, the only family member who hadn't drifted away after she'd become pregnant with Luca. His monthly visits were like oxygen, giving her precious moments to breathe, to remember she wasn't completely alone in this world. The bus ride to the airport was crowded, forcing Milena to stand swaying with each turn as she checked her phone repeatedly. Mrs. Henderson had sent a photo of Luca, methodically arranging his toy cars by color, his way of staying calm when his routine changed. The sight made Milena's heart ache. 6 years of single motherhood had taught her that guilt was a constant companion, as familiar as her own reflection. The airport terminal hummed with its usual chaos. Reunions, departures, lives intersecting in a constant flow of movement. Milena's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for Drew's familiar leather jacket. Her brother always wore the same one, a comfort in the sea of faces that threatened to overwhelm her. Then she saw it, the worn brown leather, the slight tear near the right shoulder that Drew refused to repair. Without thinking, moving on pure emotion and exhaustion, Milena stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "You're late," she mumbled into the jacket, inhaling the scent that wasn't quite right, her tired brain taking too long to process the wrongness. The man turned, and Milena's world tilted sharply. Instead of Drew's familiar face, she found herself staring into startled green eyes that definitely did not belong to her brother. The man was taller than Drew, with carefully trimmed facial hair and an expression that shifted from surprise to something softer, more intrigued. "I don't think I am," he said, his voice warm and tinged with amusement, "though I'm suddenly wishing I was whoever you're waiting for." Mortification crashed over Milena in waves. She stepped back so quickly she nearly stumbled, her professional mask slipping into place like armor. "I'm so sorry," she managed, her voice steady despite the embarrassment burning in her cheeks. "I thought you were my brother." The man, who wore his expensive suit with the casual ease of someone born to wealth, smiled. Not the condescending smile Milliner had come to expect from people of his obvious social status, but something genuine that reached his eyes. No harm done. "I'm Rowan." He extended his hand, and Milliner found herself taking it automatically, her customer service training kicking in. His grip was firm but gentle, and for a brief moment, she felt the strange spark of connection that sometimes occurs between strangers in moments of shared vulnerability. "Milliner," she replied, then immediately wondered why she'd given him her real name. She pulled her hand back, tucking it into her pocket where it still tingled from the contact. "I should go find my brother." "Of course." Rowan adjusted the strap of his leather briefcase, but his eyes didn't leave her face. It was nice being mistaken for him. Milliner turned away, her heart pounding with an unfamiliar rhythm. She forced herself to walk, not run, fighting the urge to look back. She was 33 years old, far too old for this kind of schoolgirl embarrassment. She had responsibilities, a son who needed her, bills to pay, and exactly 45 minutes to find Drew before her shift at the cafe started. But as she walked away, she could feel Rowan's gaze following her, heavy with unspoken possibilities. And for the first time in years, something inside her chest fluttered, a sensation so foreign it took her a moment to recognize it as hope. She found Drew 10 minutes later at the correct gate, wearing a denim jacket and a concerned expression. "You okay, sis? You look like you've seen a ghost." Milliner shook her head, pushing away the memory of green eyes and a gentle smile. "I'm fine, just tired. Come on, I've got to get to work." As they walked toward the cafe where she would start her evening shift, Milliner deliberately avoided looking toward Gate C, where she'd left Rowan. She had learned long ago that some things weren't meant for people like her, single mothers working 2 jobs, women who counted every penny and still came up short, women who couldn't afford to dream. But that night, as she served coffee to travelers and cleaned tables with mechanical precision, she caught herself looking up every time the door chimed, and each time it wasn't him, she felt a small pang of disappointment that she refused to acknowledge. After all, real life wasn't a fairy tale. It was alarm clocks at 4:45 a.m. and carefully managed routines and doing whatever it took to keep your child safe and fed. It was being strong when you wanted to break and never, ever allowing yourself to want more than you could safely reach. Yet as she counted her tips at the end of her shift, Milliner found herself touching her lips, remembering the smile she'd given a stranger, the first real smile that had crossed her face in longer than she could remember. And in the quiet of the empty cafe, she allowed herself exactly 30 seconds, counted in her head, to wonder what it might feel like to be held by someone who looked at her the way Rowan had, just before she walked away. Then the 30 seconds ended, and Milliner Carter did what she always did. She straightened her shoulders, wiped down the counter one last time, and stepped out into the night, ready to face another day of reality. 3 days after the airport incident, the evening rush at Heaven's Cup Cafe brought its usual parade of hurried travelers and delayed flights. Milliner mechanically wiped down the counter, her movements precise and practiced. The coffee grinder's familiar whir almost drowned out the overhead announcement of another postponed departure. She'd almost convinced herself she'd imagined him. Almost. Until he walked through the door at 8:47 p.m., wearing a grey sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent, looking decidedly out of place among the tired passengers and their rolling suitcases. Rowan's eyes found hers immediately, as if he'd known exactly where she'd be standing. He'd traded his business suit for casual wear, but nothing could disguise the quiet confidence in his stride. Her heart performed an unauthorized somersault. "Just passing through?" Milliner asked, her tone carefully professional as he approached the counter. She noticed he'd chosen the exact spot where the overhead light caught his eyes, making them appear almost translucent. "Actually," Rowan replied, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, "I heard this place has the best coffee in the airport. We're the only coffee shop in Terminal C." Then I guess the review was accurate. Despite herself, Milliner felt a smile threatening to break through her professional mask. She pushed it down, focusing instead on reorganizing the already perfectly aligned sugar packets. "For what can I get you?" "Whatever you recommend." He leaned slightly forward, reading her name tag with an intensity that made her skin tingle. Milliner. The way he said her name, like he was tasting it, made her fingers fumble with the paper cups. "Our house blend is popular with travelers." "Perfect." He watched as she worked, her movements quick and efficient. "You weren't here yesterday." The comment caught her off guard. She kept her eyes on the coffee stream, measuring its flow. Tuesday is my day off. I know. Now. The implications of his words hung in the air between them. He'd come looking for her yesterday, had probably planned his casual appearance, right down to the perfectly rumpled sweater that made him look more approachable, less like the CEO he was. Milena snapped a lid onto his cup with more force than necessary. $4.75. He handed her a 20, their fingers brushing briefly. Keep the change. I don't need. Consider it an apology for yesterday's wasted trip. His smile was disarming, genuine in a way that made her defenses waver. Though technically you owe me an apology too. You did hug me without permission. Heat crept up her neck. Shy, that was a case of mistaken identity. Still the best thing that's happened to me at an airport. He took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving hers, including this coffee, which is exactly as average as I expected. A laugh escaped before she could stop it. Then why are you drinking it? Because you made it. The simple honesty in his voice made her breath catch. Behind her, the coffee grinder started up again, filling the silence that stretched between them. Milena busied herself with wiping invisible spots off the counter, very aware of his continued presence. My shift ends in 20 minutes, she found herself saying, immediately regretting the words. I know that too. Of course he did. He'd probably timed his appearance precisely, the same way he'd chosen his casual outfit and his disarming smile. Everything about him screamed calculation, yet something in his eyes spoke of genuine interest. I have to get home, she added firmly. I have responsibilities. Let me drive you. I take the bus. I know. I saw you waiting at the stop yesterday. She stilled, looking up at him sharply. Are you stalking me? I'm trying to get to know you, he corrected, his tone serious now. Admittedly, not in the most conventional way, but something tells me you don't have time for conventional. He was right, and that irritated her more than his presumption. Single motherhood had stripped away any chance at normal dating rituals years ago. Between work, Luca's needs, and the constant juggling of bills, her life ran on a precision schedule that left no room for coffee dates or casual flirtation. I have a son, she said abruptly, watching his face carefully. He's 6. He's autistic. My life revolves around his needs. I know. This time, she couldn't hide her surprise. How? You have a photo taped inside your locker door. I saw it when you were getting your apron. He's wearing a blue shirt with planets on it, sitting on a swing. He looks happy. The detail in his observation touched something deep inside her. Most people's eyes glazed over the moment she mentioned Luca's autism, but Rowan had noticed not just her son, but the specific details of a photo glimpsed briefly through a partially open locker door. He likes space, she said softly, especially stars. He draws them everywhere. Tell me more. And somehow, in the quiet lull between customers, Milena found herself talking about Luca, about his careful way of moving through the world, his silent observations, his love of patterns and order. Rowan listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was truly engaging with her words. My shift is ending, she said finally, noticing the time with a start. I need to catch the 9:30 bus. Let me drive you home. Before she could protest, he added, no expectations, no pressure, just a ride home on a cold night. She should say no. Every life lesson, every hard-earned piece of wisdom screamed at her to decline, but her feet ached from a double shift, and the thought of waiting in the cold for a bus that might be late made her resolve waver. Just a ride, she said firmly. His answering smile was warm enough to chase away the evening chill. Just a ride. 20 minutes later, Milena found herself in the passenger seat of a car that cost more than she made in a year. The leather seats were heated, the engine barely a whisper as they pulled away from the airport. She gave directions in short, clipped sentences, hyper-aware of the growing distance between this moment and her normal life. Your brother, Rowan said as they waited at a red light. The one you thought I was. Tell me about him. Drew. He visits once a month, brings Luca small gifts. Nothing expensive, just thoughtful things. Last time it was a pack of glow-in-the-dark stars for his ceiling. Luca lined them up in perfect rows. You smile differently when you talk about them. What do you mean? Softer, less guarded. He glanced at her briefly. It's beautiful. The compliment landed like a physical touch. Milena turned to look out the window, watching familiar streets pass by. This is my stop, she said, as they approached her apartment complex. Thank you for the ride. Rowan pulled up to the curb but made no move to get out. Will you be working tomorrow night? Yes. Good. He smiled that disarming smile again. I hear the coffee's terrible, but the company's worth it. Milena got out of the car before she could say something foolish, something that might encourage this impossible thing growing between them. But as she walked toward her building, she heard his window roll down. "Milena!" She turned, arms wrapped around herself in the cold. "Thank you for trusting me with the ride, and with Luca. I know neither was easy for you." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and hurried inside. From her window, she watched his car idle for a moment longer before pulling away, its taillights disappearing into the night. Later, after checking on a sleeping Luca and paying the babysitter, Milena stood in her small bathroom, staring at her reflection. The woman who looked back seemed different somehow, less tired, more alive. "Don't," she told her reflection firmly. "Don't you dare hope." But as she turned away, she caught herself touching the smile that lingered on her lips, a smile that felt as dangerous as it did wonderful. In her son's room, the glow-in-dark stars cast tiny pinpoints of light on the ceiling, arranged in perfect lines. Milena stood in the doorway, watching Luca's peaceful sleep, and allowed herself to remember the way Rowan had listened when she talked about her son, not with pity or discomfort, but with genuine interest, as if Luca's differences made him more fascinating, not less. "Just a ride," she whispered to herself. That's all it was. But even as she said the words, she knew she was lying, because somehow in the space of one evening, Rowan Ellison had managed to slip past her carefully constructed walls and plant a seed of possibility that terrified her. Tomorrow would be Thursday. She would wake at 4:45 a.m. She would make Luca's breakfast, go to work, count every penny, and continue the endless dance of survival that had become her life. But for tonight, just for tonight, she allowed herself to feel the warmth that lingered in her chest, as bright and dangerous as the stars on her son's ceiling. Rain pelted the clinic's windows, turning the Friday morning rush into a blur of umbrellas and squeaking shoes on linoleum. Milena's fingers flew over the keyboard, processing insurance forms with mechanical efficiency, while her mind drifted to last night's conversation in Rowan's car. 3 rides home in 3 days, each one feeling more dangerous than the last. Ms. Carter. She looked up to find Dr. Stevens frowning at her, a chart in his hands. "Your son's prescription. You forgot to pick it up yesterday." Reality crashed back like a bucket of cold water. Luca's medication. How could she have forgotten? "I'm so sorry. It's okay." The older doctor's expression softened. "I know you're working double shifts. I filled it for you." He placed the paper bag on her desk. "But Milena, take care of yourself too." She clutched the bag, shame burning in her throat. 7 years of never missing a prescription, never dropping a single ball in the intricate juggling act of her life, until now. Until a man with kind eyes made her forget, just for a moment, the weight of her responsibilities. Her phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Henderson. "Luca, having difficult morning. Won't put on blue sweater. Very upset." Milena's heart clenched. The blue sweater was in the wash. She'd forgotten to run the laundry last night after work. Another ball dropped. She typed back quickly. "Check his bottom drawer. Green sweater with silver buttons. Tell him it's like stars in the forest." 3 dots appeared as Mrs. Henderson typed. Long minutes passed before. It worked. He's calm now. Starting breakfast? Milena released a shaky breath, aware of how close they'd come to a full meltdown, all because she'd let herself get distracted by impossible dreams. The morning crawled by in a haze of insurance codes and patient check-ins. During her lunch break, huddled in the small break room, she pulled out her phone to cancel her evening shift at the cafe. She couldn't risk any more distractions, but before she could make the call, a new message appeared. "I have a serious question about coffee. Rowan." Her finger hovered over the delete button. Another message. "Does the terrible taste grow on you eventually? Or do airport cafe employees have special training in taste bud suppression?" Despite everything, she smiled, then immediately frowned at herself for smiling. "How did you get my number?" she typed back. "I may have bribed Joey from the morning shift with concert tickets. That's crossing a line." "I know. I'm sorry. I missed you this morning." The simple honesty of his words made her chest ache. She'd switched to an earlier shift at the cafe, specifically to avoid him. He'd figured that out too, apparently. "I have to go," she typed. "Work. Have dinner with me tonight." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I'm drowning," she wanted to type. "Because I'm one missed shift away from not making rent." Because my son needs stability and routine, not a mother who's suddenly acting like a teenager with a crush. Instead, she wrote, because this isn't real. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came. It feels real to me. Milena turned off her phone, forcing herself to focus on work. But his words echoed in her head all afternoon, through patient check-ins and insurance calls, through the steady drum of rain against windows. At 4:30, she stepped out into the wet evening, umbrella clutched against the wind. The bus stop was crowded with people seeking shelter from the rain. She checked her phone, now turned back on, and saw 3 missed calls from Mrs. Henderson. Her heart stopped. The voicemail played, Milena, don't worry, everything's fine. It's just, well, there's someone here. He brought Luca's prescription, said you left it at work. He's sitting with Luca now, actually. They're organizing Luca's car collection by wheel size. Luca's never let anyone touch his cars before. The world tilted sharply on its axis. Milena's fingers shook as she dialed for a rideshare she couldn't afford. 10 minutes later, she burst through Mrs. Henderson's front door, rain-soaked and frantic, and stopped dead in her tracks. There, on the living room floor, sat Rowan Ellison in his $1,000 suit, meticulously measuring toy car wheels with a ruler, while Luca watched intently. Her son's face held the focused concentration he only showed when something deeply interested him. The red one has slightly larger wheels, Rowan was saying softly. See, 2.4 centimeters instead of 2.3. Where should we put it in the line? Luca's hand moved carefully, adjusting the car's position with precision. His shoulders were relaxed, his breathing even. No signs of distress at having a stranger in his space. Perfect, Rowan nodded. Exactly right. You have an amazing eye for detail. Mrs. Henderson appeared at Milena's elbow. He's been here almost an hour, she whispered. Luca hasn't made a single stress sound, not one. He even smiled when they started measuring. Milena's throat felt too tight to speak. She watched as Rowan handed Luca another car, maintaining the perfect balance of engagement and space that so many people got wrong. The prescription, she managed finally. I forgot. It's on the kitchen counter, Mrs. Henderson said. He got it before the pharmacy closed. Said he noticed it on your desk when he stopped by the clinic. She paused. How's Milena? Who is he? Nobody, she whispered. He's nobody. But even as she said it, Rowan looked up and saw her. His smile was careful, contained, as if he knew he'd overstepped but couldn't quite bring himself to regret it. Hey, he said softly. Luca's teaching me about proper car organization. Did you know the silver Corvette has exactly the same wheelbase as the blue Mustang? But they're in different categories because the Corvette's hood is 0.3 centimeters longer. Luca held up the cars in question, demonstrating without words. His eyes were clear, engaged. He looked happy. I should go, Rowan said, standing slowly. Thank you for letting me learn about cars, Luca. Maybe next time you can show me your star collection. Luca didn't respond verbally, but he carefully placed the silver Corvette in Rowan's hand, a gesture that made Mrs. Henderson gasp softly. Sharing toys was not something Luca did, ever. Rowan seemed to understand the significance. He held the car with exaggerated care, examining it from all angles. This is a very special car, he said seriously. Thank you for trusting me with it. Would it be okay if I gave it back to your mum to keep safe for you? A small nod. Rowan placed the car in Milena's palm, his fingers brushing hers for just a moment. I'm sorry if I overstepped, he said quietly. I couldn't stand the thought of you worrying about the prescription all night. She should be angry, should tell him to leave, to stop inserting himself into her carefully structured life. Instead, she found herself asking, how did you know? About the cars, about how to talk to him. I Googled autism and routines after you told me about him, read some parent forums, learned about the importance of precision and respect for organization. The rest was just listening, watching, like he does. The simple thoughtfulness of it undid her completely. Have dinner with me? He said again. Not tonight. I know tonight you need to be with him. But tomorrow, please. Behind them, Luca had returned to his cars, contentedly measuring and adjusting. Mrs. Henderson was pretending to dust nearby, obviously eavesdropping. The rain drummed against windows, and somewhere a clock ticked. Marking each second, she stood there holding a toy Corvette like it was the key to something she didn't dare name. Okay, she heard herself say. Rowan's smile was like sunrise. Okay, he echoed softly. He left quietly, carefully, the same way he'd apparently entered their lives. Milena watched through the window as he got into his expensive car, somehow not looking out of place, despite having spent an hour measuring toy cars on a suburban living room floor. "Well," Mrs. Henderson said behind her, "I guess he's not nobody after all." No, Milena thought, clutching the silver Corvette. He wasn't nobody, and that was exactly what terrified her. Because now, watching him drive away in the rain, she realized it wasn't just her heart at risk anymore. Somehow, without warning, Rowan Ellison had found his way into Luca's carefully ordered world as well. And if this all fell apart, when it all fell apart, she wasn't sure either of them would recover. Saturday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Milena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying her reflection with critical eyes. She'd borrowed a dress from her clinic co-worker. Simple, sun, black, man, nothing fancy. But the woman staring back at her looked different somehow. Hopeful, terrified. "You look pretty, Mommy." She turned to find Luca in the doorway, holding his favorite blue blanket. He didn't make eye contact, but his fingers traced patterns on the soft fabric, a sign he was processing something important. "Thank you, baby." She knelt to his level, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "You remember what we talked about? Mrs. Henderson will stay with you tonight. Everything will be exactly the same as always. Except you." The simple observation hit her like a physical blow. Luca rarely spoke in complete sentences, preferring to communicate through gestures and single words. When he did speak clearly, it usually meant something significant was troubling him. "I'll be back before bedtime," she promised. "We'll still do our star count together." He nodded, but his fingers moved faster on the blanket. "The carman, he knows about wheels." "Yes, he does." His ruler was precise, to the millimeter. Milena's heart squeezed. Of course, that's what had won her son's trust. Rowan's attention to exact measurements, his respect for precision. Would it be okay if he came to visit again sometime? Luca considered this, his head tilted slightly. Either silver Corvette needs remeasuring. The carpet fibers might have altered the wheelbase. A car horn sounded outside, not Rowan's car, but Mrs. Henderson's ancient sedan pulling into the driveway. Milena checked her phone. 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes until Rowan would arrive. "Dinner at 6:55, she reminded Luca, as Mrs. Henderson let herself in. Then homework, then your documentary about deep-sea creatures, then bath at 8:30. "So I'll be back for stars at 9, Sue. I've got his schedule written down to the minute," Mrs. Henderson assured her, hanging up her rain jacket. "Though I doubt I need it. This young man keeps better time than my kitchen clock." Luca had already moved to the dining room table, arranging his homework supplies with mathematical precision. Milena watched him, guilt warring with another emotion she didn't dare name. "Go," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "Live a little. We'll be fine." At exactly 7 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up outside. Milena's hands shook as she checked her lipstick one final time. "Call me if..." "I will. Now go before you talk yourself out of it." Rowan stood beside his car, wearing charcoal slacks and a blue sweater that probably cost more than her monthly utilities, but his smile was nervous, almost shy, as he opened the passenger door. "You look beautiful." She slid into the leather seat, hyper-aware of every wrinkle in her borrowed dress. "Where are we going?" "I thought we'd try this little place I know. Very quiet, no crowds. They make incredible pasta." He glanced at her as he pulled away from the curb. "But if you'd rather go somewhere else?" "No, that sounds nice." She fiddled with her purse strap. "I haven't been to a real restaurant in ages. Usually it's drive-through between shifts or microwave dinners after Luca's asleep." "I know." His voice was soft. "You work so hard. I do what I have to do." "That's not what I meant." He navigated through quiet streets, away from the busier parts of town. "I meant it as admiration, not pity. The way you've built your life around Luca's needs. The way you keep going no matter what. It's remarkable. It's survival. It's strength." He turned down a tree-lined street she'd never seen before. "And it's one of the many reasons I can't stop thinking about you." Before she could respond, they pulled up to a small restaurant tucked between old brick buildings. Warm light spilled from its windows, and the sign above the door read simply, "Marco's." Inside, the host greeted Rowan by name and led them to a corner table, partially hidden by a living wall of plants. The privacy of it, the obvious consideration for her comfort, made something in Milena's chest tighten. "The owner's son is on the spectrum," Rowan said quietly as they sat. "That's how I found this place." Marco understands the importance of quiet spaces. Of course he'd researched that too. just like he'd researched how to interact with Luca, how to respect his routines. Milena unfolded her napkin, needing something to do with her hands. "Why are you trying so hard?" "Because you're worth it. You don't know me. I know you work 2 jobs without complaining. I know you count to 30 when you need to calm down. Yes, I noticed that. I know you organize sugar packets by color when you're nervous, just like Luca organizes his cars by wheel size. I know you hide your smile behind your hand, like you're afraid to let people see it." He leaned forward slightly. "I know you're brilliant at mental math, but pretend not to be because it makes your co-workers uncomfortable. I know you sleep about 4 hours a night, but never let exhaustion affect how you treat people." "Stop," she whispered. "I know you're terrified right now, not of me, but of this, of wanting something for yourself, of letting someone else carry even a small piece of your burden. You don't understand. I can't let myself depend on anyone." He shook his head. "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me know you, really know you. The way you are when you're not hiding behind schedules and responsibilities." The waiter appeared with water, giving Milena a moment to compose herself. She took a sip, letting the cold liquid soothe her tight throat. "My life is those schedules and responsibilities. They're not a mask I can just take off." "I know that too." Rowan's eyes held hers. "I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm asking if I can be part of it. All of it. The early mornings, the double shifts, the toy car measurements, the hard parts and the beautiful parts." "Why?" "Because from the moment you hugged the wrong person in an airport, my perfectly ordered world stopped making sense. And for the first time in my life, I don't want it to make sense. I just want—" "What?" "You, just as you are. Schedules, responsibilities, and all." The candle between them flickered, casting shadows that danced across his face. In its warm light, Milena could see the genuine emotion in his eyes, the slight tremor in his hand as he reached across the table. "We don't have to figure it all out tonight," he said softly. "We can just have dinner, talk, be ourselves. Be ourselves." As if it were that simple, as if herself wasn't split into 1,000 pieces, each one carefully measured and allocated to the tasks that kept her small world turning. But as she looked at him in the candlelight, she remembered how he'd sat on Mrs. Henderson's floor, measuring toy cars with the same care he probably used in corporate boardrooms, how he'd researched autism and quiet restaurants, and all the little details that made up her life. "Okay," she said finally, uncurling her fingers from her napkin. "Let's have dinner." His smile was worth every moment of terror that had preceded it. "Okay. But I should warn you, the pasta here really is incredible. You might have to come back again just to try everything on the menu." "Is that a threat or a promise?" "Both," he said, and the warmth in his voice wrapped around her like a blanket. "Definitely both." As their waiter approached with menus, Milena found herself doing something dangerous. She began to hope, just a little, just enough to feel like maybe, just maybe, the woman in the borrowed dress deserved more than survival. She checked her phone quickly. 8:15 p.m. Luca would be finishing his documentary now, preparing for his bath routine, everything running exactly on schedule, except her heart, which had decided to beat to an entirely new rhythm. Sunday mornings belonged to Luca. It was their one unbreakable rule, the only time Milena never took shifts or made appointments. They had a routine, pancakes shaped like stars, documentary reruns, and quiet hours where Luca would draw while Milena caught up on bills. But this Sunday felt different. "Your pancake has uneven points," Luca observed, studying his breakfast with mathematical precision. 3 millimeters off on the left side. "I'm sorry, baby. Should I make another one?" He considered this, head tilted. "No. Imperfections can be interesting. Like the carman's watch." Milena's hand stilled over the griddle. "What about his watch?" It was 2 minutes fast, but he knew it was 2 minutes fast. He adjusted his measurements accordingly. Of course he had. Of course Rowan had noticed his watch's inaccuracy and explained it to Luca, just like he'd noticed everything else about their lives, fitting himself into their carefully structured world with a patience that made her chest ache. Her phone buzzed softly on the counter. She already knew who it was. "Good morning. I keep smiling at nothing. People on the street probably think I'm crazy." Despite herself, Milena smiled too. Last night had been perfect. The quiet restaurant, the easy conversation, the way Rowan had listened, really listened, as she talked about her dreams of going back to school someday, of making a better life for Luca. He'd driven her home exactly on schedule, getting her back for Luca's bedtime star count without a minute to spare. "You are crazy," she typed back. Who smiles on a Sunday morning? People who had the best dinner of their lives last night. Another text followed quickly. Too much. I'm trying not to overwhelm you, but I'm not very good at hiding how I feel. The honesty of it made her breath catch. She glanced at Luca, who was now measuring his orange juice level with careful eyes. Sunday is Luca time, she replied. No distractions. I know. Family day. I respect that completely. I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. Both of you, both of you. Not many men included her son in their morning after texts. Then again, Rowan wasn't like many men. Mom? Luca's voice pulled her attention back. The calendar is wrong. She followed his pointing finger to the kitchen wall calendar. Someone, probably Mrs. Henderson, had marked the upcoming Friday with a bright red circle. Parent-teacher conference? Milena read, her stomach dropping. She'd completely forgotten. It's okay, baby. I'll request the morning off from the clinic. But even as she said it, she knew it would be a problem. Doctor Stevens had already approved her taking Thursday morning off for Luca's dental appointment, asking for Friday too. Her phone buzzed again. If you need anything, even just a coffee delivery or a grocery run, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations, just here. Milena stared at the message until the letters blurred. It would be so easy to lean on him, to accept the help he so genuinely offered, but dependency was a slippery slope she couldn't afford to start down. "Dear Mum." Luca's voice had taken on the slight edge that signaled rising anxiety. The calendar is wrong. I know, baby. We'll figure it out. No. Look, he pointed again, more insistently. The phases of the moon, they're incorrect. She looked closer. Sure enough, the calendar showed a full moon for next weekend when it should be a waning crescent. Such a small detail. But to Luca, these accuracies mattered deeply. Oh, you're right, she said, relieved to focus on a problem she could actually solve. Should we fix it? He nodded, already reaching for his special astronomy book, the one he used to track lunar phases. They spent the next hour carefully updating each month, Luca's tension easing as order was restored to his world. If only her own world could be fixed so easily. The rest of the morning passed in their usual Sunday rhythm, but Milena's mind kept drifting to the upcoming week's logistics. She'd have to dip into the emergency fund, again, to cover Mrs. Henderson's extra hours, maybe pick up an extra cafe shift to make up the difference, but that would mean less time with Luca, more disruption to his routine. Her phone lit up with a text from her clinic supervisor. Schedule change. Dr. Walsh called in sick. Need you to cover Thursday morning, the same time as Luca's dental appointment. The appointment they'd waited 3 months for, with the only pediatric dentist in town who specialized in autistic children. Milena's hands shook as she typed back, "Please, I have my son's appointment. Sorry, no other coverage available. Dr. Stevens is at a conference." She closed her eyes, fighting back tears of frustration. One more impossible choice in a life full of them. Her phone buzzed again. "Rowan, I know it's Sunday family time, but I just drove past the most amazing telescope in a store window. Made me think of Luca. Would it be okay if I sent you a picture? Only if it won't disrupt anything." The thoughtfulness of it, asking permission before even sending a photo, made something inside her crack. Before she could stop herself, she hit the call button. He answered on the first ring. "Hey, so I'm sorry if I... Do you really want to be part of this?" she interrupted, her voice low so Luca wouldn't hear from the living room. "All of it? The hard parts too?" "Yes." No hesitation, no qualification, just simple truth. "I need..." She swallowed hard. "I need someone to take Luca to the dentist on Thursday morning. Mrs. Henderson can't do it, and I just got called into work, and it's a special appointment we can't reschedule, and..." "What time? You don't even know if you're free." "I'll make myself free." "What time?" she told him, adding quickly, "But you have to understand, he needs exact routine. The appointment is at 10:15. You'd need to pick him up at exactly 9:47 to account for traffic. He'll want to sit in the back seat, left side only. He'll need his blue comfort bag with his headphones and..." "Milena," his voice was gentle, "send me a detailed list. I'll follow it to the letter, I promise." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I meant what I said last night. I want all of it. The schedules, the precise measurements, the hard choices, the beautiful moments, all of it." Through the doorway, she could see Luca in his usual Sunday spot, carefully drawing his weekly star chart. His face held the peaceful focus that came with doing something he loved. "The telescope," she said finally. "Show me the picture." She could hear Rowan's smile. "Actually, what if..." What if I brought it by, later, after dinner? Only if it won't disrupt his routine. We could set it up on your balcony, make it part of the bedtime star count. Milena thought of her tiny apartment, so different from the world Rowan came from. Thought of all the reasons she should say no. The star count is at 9, she said instead. Don't be late. I wouldn't dare. I hear timing is everything in this family. Family. The word echoed in her chest like a bell. After they hung up, Milena stood in her small kitchen, looking at the calendar with its newly corrected moon phases, at her son, contentedly drawing stars, at the morning sunlight that somehow seemed brighter than usual. "Mom," Luca called from the living room, "can we add a new constellation to the chart tonight?" She smiled, feeling the weight of impossible choices lift just a little. "Yes, baby, I think tonight would be perfect for that, because maybe, just maybe, there was room in their carefully measured world for one more set of stars." Thursday morning arrived with the weight of 1,000 uncertainties. Milena had been awake since 3 a.m., reviewing the exhaustively detailed instructions she'd written for Rowan. 6 pages, color-coded, with timestamps for every potential scenario. "Remember, baby," she knelt before Luca as he finished his precisely portioned breakfast. "Today is different. Mr. Rowan will take you to Dr. Mason's office." Luca aligned his fork perfectly parallel to his empty plate. "The car man. His ruler is accurate. Yes, he's very careful about measurements." She checked her phone, 9:39 a.m. "He'll be here in exactly 8 minutes. 8 minutes is enough time to brush teeth following the correct pattern." Milena smiled, relief flooding her chest at his calm acceptance. The telescope visit on Sunday had helped enormously. Rowan had arrived at exactly 8:57 p.m., the professional-grade telescope carefully packed in his car. He'd let Luca inspect every piece, measuring and cataloging each component while explaining their functions with scientific precision. Her phone buzzed. 5 minutes away. "Following the route you mapped exactly." Of course he was. He'd spent 2 hours yesterday driving the route at different times, calculating traffic patterns and potential delays, just like he'd visited the dentist's office in advance, photographing the waiting room so Luca could preview the space. At exactly 9:47 a.m., a soft knock echoed through the apartment. Luca looked up from his toothbrushing routine, eyes focused on the middle distance. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, 0.5 seconds apart. Milena opened the door to find Rowan in casual clothes, the same kind Luca's occupational therapist wore, holding a small bag. "I brought something," he said quietly, "but only if it won't disrupt his routine. It's a pocket star chart with precise measurements of constellations. I thought it might help during the appointment." The thoughtfulness made her throat tight. "You can show him in the car, left back seat." "I remember." He held up a printed copy of her instructions. "I memorized everything, and I'll text you updates every 15 minutes. I'm sorry about all this. I know you probably had important meetings." "Hey." His voice was soft but firm. "Nothing is more important than this, than him, than you." Before she could respond, Luca emerged from the bathroom, blue comfort bag clutched to his chest. His eyes darted to Rowan, then away. "Hello, Luca," Rowan said, maintaining the precise distance specified in Milena's notes. "I brought something for you to measure later, if you'd like. But first, we should leave in exactly 2 minutes to maintain our schedule." Luca's shoulders relaxed slightly at the mention of schedules and measurements. He moved toward the door with careful steps, pausing to line up his shoes perfectly before putting them on. "Mom," his voice was barely a whisper, "you'll be here at 11:43? "Yes, baby. I'll be waiting right here." "And the stars tonight?" "Same as always." 9 o'clock? He nodded once, then walked to the car with measured steps, Rowan following at the exact distance Milena had specified. She watched from the window as Luca settled into his preferred seat, as Rowan checked the seatbelt with careful attention to pressure and angle. Her phone buzzed. "We're okay." He's looking at the star chart. Deep breaths, Mama. Milena pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting back tears as she watched them drive away. For 6 years, she'd done everything alone. Every doctor's appointment, every meltdown, every small victory and crushing setback. And now, the clinic was busy, but Milena's mind kept drifting to her phone, waiting for Rowan's updates. 9:58 a.m. Traffic light at Main Street was red. Adjusted route to maintain schedule. 10:07 a.m. Arrived at parking lot. Luca measuring parking space lines with pocket ruler. 10:13 a.m. In waiting room. Star chart helping with fluorescent lights. 10:22 a.m. Dr. Mason letting him inspect tools before starting, all measurements recorded in his notebook, 10:45 a.m., cleaning complete, no distress, he's amazing, Milena. She was processing insurance forms when the final update came through, accompanied by a photo. Her hands shook as she opened it. There was Luca, sitting in the dentist's chair, actually smiling as he held up a small certificate. Below it, Rowan had written, "First cavity-free checkup." We celebrated by measuring the exact angle of the dentist's chair recline. Relief made her legs weak. She ducked into the break room, needing a moment to compose herself. But before she could, another text arrived. He asked if we could stop at the store to buy a protractor. Said his star charts need more precise angles. I know it's not in the schedule, but... Milena stared at the message, understanding the weight of what he was really asking. Any deviation from routine could trigger anxiety, could spiral into a meltdown, but Luca had asked, had actually verbalized a want. That alone was huge. "What does your gut tell you?" she typed back. He's calm, focused. The star chart kept him grounded through the appointment. I think he feels safe. Safe. The word every special needs parent dreams of hearing. "Okay," she replied, "but no more than 15 minutes in the store. Already mapped the shortest route to the checkout counter. We'll be home by 11:43. She returned to her desk, trying to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting to the image of her son, smiling in that dentist's chair, of Rowan Magazine who measured parking spaces and memorized schedules, and understood that love sometimes looked like precise angles and carefully counted seconds. At exactly 11:41 a.m., she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. 2 sets, one careful and measured, one slightly longer, but deliberately matched to the first. "Mom!" Luca's voice held an excitement she rarely heard. "We found a protractor with digital display, accurate to 0.01 degrees. She turned to find them in the doorway, Luca clutching a small shopping bag, Rowan standing slightly behind him with an expression that held something deeper than pride. "The car man helped me calculate the optimal angle for Orion viewing," Luca continued, his words coming faster than usual. "Did you know that stellar parallax requires precise trigonometric functions?" "I didn't," she said softly, watching as her son, her beautiful, brilliant, often silent son, practically vibrated with enthusiasm. "Tell me more." Rowan caught her eye over Luca's head as the boy launched into a detailed explanation of astronomical measurements. His smile held no triumph, no pride in his accomplishment, only genuine joy at Luca's happiness. "I should go," he said, when Luca paused for breath. "Let you get back to work." "No?" The word surprised them both. "I mean, it's my lunch break. Maybe we could all get something if that wouldn't disrupt." "Lunch is at 12:15, Luca supplied. 31 minutes from now. Sufficient time to calculate stellar angles while waiting." Rowan's eyes never left Milena's face. "I'd like that, if you're sure." She wasn't sure about anything, except the way her son's hands moved with excitement as he talked about stars, and the way Rowan watched them both like they were the center of his universe. "I'm sure," she said softly. "After all, we need to verify those stellar parallax calculations, right?" Luca nodded seriously. "So multiple observers improve accuracy." "They do," Rowan agreed, and Milena heard the deeper meaning in his words. "They really do." As they walked to the cafe down the street, Milena watched her son measuring sidewalk cracks with his new protractor. While Rowan listened intently to each calculation, something was shifting, changing, like the slow rotation of stars across the night sky. And for the first time in years, she didn't try to measure or control it. She just let it be, as vast and beautiful as the constellations Luca loved so much. The first sign of trouble arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks after the dental appointment. Milena was at her clinic desk when an email notification lit up her screen. From Lawrence, Ellison Ecotech Global. Com. Subject. Regarding my son's recent activities. Her stomach dropped. She'd known this moment would come. The moment when Rowan's world collided with hers in ways that couldn't be measured or controlled. Ems. Carter. I'll be direct. My son's recent behavior has become concerning. Missed board meetings. Declined social engagements. Time spent in questionable neighborhoods. I've had you investigated, of course. Single mother. 2 jobs. Special needs, child. I'm sure you understand how this appears. I'm prepared to offer compensation for your discretion and immediate withdrawal from my son's life. Please reply with your terms. Lawrence Ellison, CEO, Ecotech Global. The words blurred as tears threatened, not from the insult, but from the clinical precision of it. The way he'd listed her life circumstances like defects to be catalogued. Her phone buzzed with Rowan's daily morning message. Just remembered how you laughed at that terrible joke I told last night. Makes meetings bearable. They'd had dinner again, simple takeout in her apartment, while Luca measured the exact angles of paper airplanes Rowan taught him to fold. It had been perfect, normal, real. Another email notification, meeting reminder, parent-teacher conference, 2:30 p.m. Reality crashed back. She still hadn't found coverage for her clinic shift. Dr. Stevens was sympathetic but firm. They were short-staffed, and she'd already taken too much time off recently. Her phone lit up again. Everything okay? You usually send a laughing emoji to mock my jokes by now. Milena stared at the message, then at the email from Rowan's father. The contrast between them made her chest ache. Can't talk now, she typed back. Work. She turned off her phone, unable to bear his response. The morning crawled by in a haze of insurance forms and appointment scheduling. At lunch, she checked her messages. Miss you already. Found a new constellation chart Luca might like. Everything all right? You seem distant. Milena. And then, sent just minutes ago. I'm worried. Please talk to me. She was composing a reply when Dr. Stevens appeared at her desk. Milena, there's someone here to see you. Her heart stopped as she looked up, expecting Rowan. Instead, she found herself facing an elegantly dressed woman in her 50s, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. Ms. Carter. The woman's smile was practiced, professional. I'm Regina Ellison, Rowan's mother. Might we speak privately? The break room felt smaller than usual, its fluorescent lights harsh against Regina's expensive jewelry. She declined the offered chair, preferring to stand with perfect posture. I'll be brief, Regina said, her voice soft but steel-edged. You seem like a sensible woman. You must understand this. Dalliance cannot continue. Milena forced herself to meet the older woman's eyes. With all due respect, that's between Rowan and me. Is it? Regina's perfectly manicured fingers traced the edge of a nearby table. Tell me, how does your son handle change? Disruption to his routine? What happens when this inevitably ends badly? The question hit like a physical blow, because of course she'd thought about it. Of course she'd lain awake at night, terrified of what would happen to Luca when, not if, this fell apart. Rowan is a good man, Regina continued, almost gently. He means well, but he's lived a certain way his entire life. Board meetings, charity galas, social obligations. Do you really see yourself fitting into that world? More importantly, do you see your son surviving in it? You don't know anything about my son. I know he's autistic. I know routine is crucial for him. I know any disruption to his carefully ordered world could be devastating. She paused. I also know about the parent-teacher conference you're missing today, the one Rowan offered to attend in your place. Milena's head snapped up. How did you... We have resources, Ms. Carter. We protect our own. Regina's voice softened marginally. You seem like a good mother. You've built a stable life for your son. Why risk destabilizing it for a relationship that can't possibly last? Before Milena could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson. Luca, very anxious about conference. Keeps checking clock. Need response about who's attending. Reality crashed in like a wave. In all the morning's chaos, she hadn't confirmed with Rowan about the conference, hadn't responded to his messages, hadn't done anything except let her carefully structured world start to unravel. Think about it, Regina said, moving toward the door. For everyone's sake. She left Milena standing in the break room, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Another message appeared. Rowan again. Just say the word, and I'll handle the conference. Already cleared my schedule. Trust me with this, please. Trust. Such a small word for such an impossible thing. Her fingers shook as she typed, I can't. I'm sorry. I just can't. She turned off her phone before his response came through. Then she did something she'd never done in 6 years of single motherhood. She broke down at work. Dr. Stevens found her 10 minutes later, still trying to pull herself together. One look at her face and he sighed. Go. What? Go to your son's conference. Family comes first. We'll manage. But you said... I know what I said. I also know that sometimes being a good boss means knowing when to break your own rules. He smiled kindly. Besides, you haven't taken a sick day in 3 years. Consider this one earned. Milena grabbed her purse with trembling hands. Thank you. I'll make up the hours. Go, he repeated firmly. Take care of your boy. She practically ran to her car, turning her phone back on as she started the engine. Messages flooded in. From Mrs. Henderson, Luca getting very anxious. Please advise. From Rowan, I don't know what happened, but I'm here. Whatever you need. From Rowan's father, I await your terms. And finally, from Rowan again, I love you, both of you. Whatever's wrong, we'll figure it out together. Just let me in, love. Another small word for an impossible thing. She pulled into the school parking lot at 2:27 p.m., her heart pounding. Through the window, she could see Luca sitting in the conference room with his teacher, meticulously arranging and rearranging a set of pencils on the table. And there, in the parking space next to hers, was a familiar black car. Rowan stepped out slowly, his eyes finding hers through the windshield. He didn't approach, didn't pressure, just stood there, patient and steady, like he'd been from the start. I got an email from your father, she said when she finally got out of her car, and a visit from your mother. I know. His voice was tight with barely contained anger. I just found out. I'm so sorry. They're right, you know, about all of it. The worlds we come from, the impossibility of this, the risk to Luca. No, he took a single step forward. They're right about the challenges, but they're wrong about what matters. He glanced toward the conference room window. He matters. You matter. The rest is just noise. It's not that simple. Actually, it is. He smiled slightly. Sometimes the most precise measurements are the simplest ones, like the distance between two hearts, the angle of a smile, the exact moment someone realizes they can't imagine their life without someone else in it. Through the window, Milena could see Luca looking up, his eyes finding them in the parking lot, his fingers stilled on the pencils. We have exactly 2 minutes until the conference starts, Rowan said softly. Just enough time for you to decide if you trust me. Trust us. This little family we're building, one careful measurement at a time. Family. The word echoed in her chest like a constellation finding its place in the night sky. 1 minute, 30 seconds, she whispered. I'll wait, however long it takes. And in that moment, standing in a school parking lot while her son watched through the window and the world tried to tear them apart, Milena Carter did the bravest thing she'd ever done. She reached for Rowan's hand. Headlines weren't part of Milena's morning routine, but there it was, glaring from her phone screen as she waited for her 5:45 a.m. bus. Ellison Eyre steps down, corporate dynasty in chaos. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the article. Words jumped out like accusations. Unprecedented, family tension, mysterious personal matters, stock prices dropping. You shouldn't read those. She looked up to find Rowan beside her at the bus stop, 2 coffee cups in hand. Steam rose from them in the early morning chill. What are you doing here? Bringing you coffee. He handed her a cup. And making sure you don't spiral into guilt over things that aren't your fault. You resigned from your family's company. I stepped back, temporarily. He leaned against the bus shelter. Told them I needed time to evaluate my priorities. They're spinning it into a crisis because that's what they do. A week had passed since the parent-teacher conference, since she'd chosen to take his hand in that parking lot. 7 days of headlines, of whispered gossip at the clinic, of Rowan's parents escalating their attempts to resolve the situation. Your father called the clinic yesterday, she said quietly. Tried to get Dr. Stevens to fire me. Rowan's jaw tightened. What happened? Dr. Stevens told him that harassing his employees was grounds for a lawsuit. A small smile touched her lips. Then he gave me a raise. Smart man. Rowan sipped his coffee. Unlike my father, who seems determined to prove exactly why I needed to step back. The 5:45 bus appeared at the corner, right on schedule. Milena moved to board, but Rowan caught her hand. Let me drive you. I can't start depending on rides. What happens when... She stopped, realizing what she'd been about to say. When what? His voice was gentle. When I leave, when this falls apart. Is that what you're worried about? Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Henderson. Luca asking about dinner schedule. Need to confirm changes. Right. Dinner. Because somehow, without any formal discussion, Rowan had become a regular part of their evening routine. 3 nights a week, he'd arrive at exactly 6:15 p.m. with groceries and his well-worn briefcase full of star charts and mathematical puzzles for Luca. I should stick to the bus, she said finally. Keep things stable. Okay. No argument, no pressure, just acceptance. I'll see you at 6:15. She nodded, boarding the bus with a strange ache in her chest. Through the window, she watched him stand there, still holding his coffee, until the bus turned the corner. The clinic was unusually busy, filled with flu season casualties and insurance renewals. Milena processed paperwork mechanically, trying not to notice the way some patients whispered when they saw her, how they'd clearly connected her to the headlines. At lunch, she found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a check for an amount that made her dizzy, along with a note in elegant handwriting. "Let's make this simple. Name your price. We all want what's best for Luca, don't we? Regina Ellison." Milena stared at the check until the numbers blurred. The amount would cover Luca's therapy for a year, could start a college fund, could... Everything okay? She looked up to find Dr. Stevens in the doorway, his kind face concerned. She held up the check helplessly. "I don't know what to do." He sat in the chair across from her desk. "Want to know what I think? Please. I think you're scared. Not of them, but of hoping, of believing you deserve something good." He smiled gently. "I've watched you for 3 years, Milena, working doubles, never complaining, building a life for your son brick by brick. But lately you smile more, you stand straighter. And Luca, he's talking to other patients in the waiting room, actually talking. That's what terrifies me," she whispered. "What if it all goes away? What if it doesn't?" Her phone buzzed, a text from Rowan. "Just had an idea for tonight's star measurement project. Think Luca might be ready to learn about parallax equations." Attached was a photo of carefully drawn diagrams, mathematical formulas broken down into simple steps. He'd clearly spent his morning preparing this, even with his company in chaos and his family in revolt. "You know, Doctor," Stevens said, watching her face soften as she looked at the photo, "sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves be happy." Another text appeared, also, "Made reservations at that quiet Italian place you liked. Saturday night. Mrs. H already agreed to watch Luca. Say yes." "I don't know how to do this," Milena admitted. "How to trust it." "Sure you do." Dr. Stevens stood, patting her shoulder. "Try one careful measurement at a time." The rest of the day passed in a blur of patients and paperwork. At exactly 6:13 p.m., Milena arrived home to find Rowan already in her parking lot, leaning against his car with grocery bags at his feet. "You're early," she said. "Actually, I've been here since 6:05, waiting to be exactly on time." He smiled that smile that still made her heart skip. "I didn't want to disrupt the schedule. Something about that, about this powerful man deliberately waiting in a parking lot to maintain her son's routine, made her reach for the envelope in her purse. "Your mother left this for me." She handed him the check. "Quite generous, isn't it?" Rowan looked at the amount, his jaw tightening, but before he could speak, the sound of running feet interrupted them. "Mom!" "Come on!" Luca's voice carried across the parking lot as he burst out of Mrs. Henderson's apartment. "It's 6:14! Time for parallax equations!" They turned to find him hurrying toward them, his movements still careful, but energized with excitement. He clutched his special notebook and calculator, ready for the evening's lessons. "Look what I brought," Rowan said, reaching into one of the grocery bags. "Special grid paper for plotting stellar coordinates. And I thought we could make space-themed pizza while we work on the math, with precisely measured toppings," Luca asked hopefully. "Is there any other way?" Milena watched them head inside, Luca already launching into a detailed explanation of his latest astronomical calculations. The envelope with the check was still in her hand. Looking down at it, she suddenly knew exactly what to do. Later that night, after Luca was asleep and Rowan had gone home, Milena sat at her small kitchen table and composed an email. "Dear Mrs. Ellison, thank you for your generous offer. You're right. We all want what's best for Luca. That's why I'm returning your check. You see, my son is teaching me something important. The most valuable measurements aren't the ones we make with money. They're the ones we make with our hearts. Sincerely, Milena Carter." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she opened her phone's camera roll, looking at the photos from dinner. Luca and Rowan bent over mathematical formulas, pizza abandoned as they lost themselves in calculations. Her son's face alive with joy, Rowan's eyes soft with love for them both. Some things, she was learning, couldn't be measured in dollars or social status or corporate dynasties. Some things could only be measured in moments like these, in carefully counted seconds, in the angle of a smile, in the quiet space between heartbeats where love took root and grew. Her phone lit up with one last message from Rowan. "Thank you for tonight, for everything, for showing me what really matters." She looked at the empty envelope on her table, then at the message glowing on her screen, at the star charts scattered across her counter, and the pizza crumbs that would need to be cleaned up before morning. And for the first time, she didn't feel the need to measure or calculate or control what was happening. She just let herself feel it. All of it. "Thank you," she typed back, "for teaching us that love doesn't always need precise measurements." His response came instantly, "But it helps when you have a good ruler and a better heart." Milena smiled, touching the words on her screen, because maybe that was the real measurement that mattered. Not the distance between their worlds, but the way their hearts had learned to beat in sync, creating a rhythm as steady and true as the stars Luca loved to count. The invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock, delivered to Milena's clinic desk by personal courier. Gold lettering caught the fluorescent light as she opened the envelope. "You are cordially invited to attend the annual Ecotech Global Charity Gala tonight at 7 p.m. the Grand Maxwell Hotel." A handwritten note was paperclipped to the corner in Rowan's distinctive script. "I know it's last minute. I know it's not our usual routine, but I need you there. Both of you. Please." Milena's hands trembled. Tonight was Thursday, pizza and star charts night. Luca had been talking about it all week, excited to show Rowan his new constellation calculations. Her phone buzzed. "Before you say no, I've thought it through. The hotel has a private observation deck. Luca can set up his telescope there, better view than your balcony. And the kitchen agreed to make his pizza exactly the way he likes it. Please trust me with this." Another text followed quickly. "It's time to stop hiding. To show my family and the whole board exactly why I stepped down, what really matters. Everything okay?" She looked up to find Dr. Stevens watching her with concern. "Rowan wants us to attend the corporate gala tonight." She showed him the invitation. "His father's making a big announcement, something about the future of the company." "Ah." Dr. Stevens sat on the edge of her desk. "And you're scared, terrified." She traced the gold lettering with one finger. "Luca doesn't do well with crowds, or changes, or having his whole world shift." "Yeah." He smiled gently. "Like he did when Rowan first came into your lives. Sometimes the scariest changes turn out to be the best ones." Her phone lit up again. Mrs. Henderson this time. Luca's teacher called. He spoke up in class today. Actually raised his hand and explained parallax to the whole room. Attached was a photo. Luca at the whiteboard, carefully drawing the same stellar diagrams Rowan had taught him. His face held the focused excitement they were seeing more and more lately. "Go," Dr. Stevens said softly. "Take the afternoon off. Get ready. Face whatever's coming. But the Anderson file will be here tomorrow." He squeezed her shoulder. "Some things are more important than paperwork." 2 hours later, Milena stood in her bedroom staring at her reflection. The dress had arrived shortly after the invitation, a deep blue silk that reminded her of the night sky. It fit perfectly, of course. Rowan would have made sure of that. "Mom," Luca's voice drew her attention to the doorway. "The angular displacement is incorrect." She turned to find him frowning at her dress. "Huh? What do you mean, baby?" "The hem." He pointed with precise movements. "It's 0.3 degrees off horizontal. The car man wouldn't like that." A laugh bubbled up in her throat. Of course, her son would notice the slightest imperfection in measurement. "Should we fix it?" He nodded seriously, already reaching for his ruler. They spent the next 15 minutes adjusting the hem while Luca calculated exact angles. By the time Mrs. Henderson arrived to help them get ready, the dress was mathematically perfect. "Look what else came," Mrs. Henderson said, holding up a garment bag. Inside was a small suit in Luca's favorite shade of blue, with subtle silver pinstripes that caught the light like stars. "The measurements are exact," Luca observed, inspecting the seams, "like the carman's rulers." "Yes, baby, exactly like that." A text lit up her phone. "Car will be there at 6:45. Everything's ready on the observation deck. You can do this, we can do this." At exactly 6:45, a sleek black car pulled up outside, but instead of a driver, it was Rowan who stepped out, wearing a tuxedo that made Milena's breath catch. "The angles of your collar are precise," Luca informed him seriously. "I measured them specially." Rowan knelt to Luca's level. "I have something for you." He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver tie clip shaped like a constellation. "It's Orion, your favorite." Luca's fingers traced the pattern with careful movements. "The distances between stars are astronomically accurate." "Of course they are." Rowan's voice was soft. "I would never give you incorrect measurements." Something about those words, about the way he understood exactly what mattered to her son, made Millionaires' eyes fill with tears. "Hey," he said, standing to face her. "We don't have to do this." "Yes," she whispered. "We do." The drive to the hotel was quiet, filled with the soft sounds of Luca measuring his tie clip with a pocket ruler. Milena watched the city lights blur past, each one bringing them closer to a world she'd never thought she'd enter. "There will be cameras," Rowan said finally. "Reporters. My father's probably planned some kind of public statement." "I know. We can still turn around." She reached for his hand. "No, we can't." Because she understood now what he was really doing. This wasn't just about facing his family or the board. This was about claiming them, publicly and permanently, about drawing a line between his old life and whatever future they were building together. The hotel lobby was a sea of designer dresses and camera flashes. Milena felt Luca tense beside her as the noise and movement threatened to overwhelm him. "Remember the deck," Rowan said quietly. "Your telescope is already set up. We just have to get through the lobby." They moved through the crowd carefully, Rowan's hand steady on Luca's shoulder, guiding him through the chaos. Milena heard the whispers, saw the phones recording their progress. Tomorrow's headlines were already writing themselves. And then, cutting through the crowd like an Arctic wind, came Regina Ellison's voice. "Rowan, a word." They turned to find his parents approaching, his mother elegant in diamonds, his father's face tight with barely controlled anger. "Not now," Rowan said firmly. "Yes, now." Lawrence Ellison stepped forward. "Before you completely destroy everything we've built, everything you were meant to be." Luca's hands began to move faster, tracking invisible patterns in the air, his first sign of distress. Milena started to reach for him, but Rowan was already there, kneeling again to meet her son's eyes. "Hey," he said softly. "Want to know a secret about this room?" Luca's fingers stilled slightly. "Look up." Rowan pointed to the grand chandelier. "See how the crystals are arranged. It's the same pattern as the Pleiades cluster. 7 points of light, with exactly 60 degrees of separation." Slowly, Luca's gaze lifted to the ceiling. His breathing steadied as he began to calculate angles, finding order in the chaos. "This is exactly what we mean," Regina hissed. "You're the heir to a corporate empire, and you're on your knees talking about star patterns." "No," Rowan said, still focused on Luca. "I'm on my knees talking to my family." The word fell like a stone into silence. Around them, phones recorded every moment, every word. "You don't mean that," Lawrence said quietly. "You can't." "Actually, Dad, I do." Rowan stood, keeping one hand gentle on Luca's shoulder. "And tonight, in front of the board and all your carefully chosen witnesses, I'm going to explain exactly why." Milena watched the emotions play across his parents' faces. Shock, anger, calculation. She saw the moment they realized how many phones were recording, how public this confrontation had become. "Perhaps," Regina said finally, her social mask slipping back into place, "we should continue this discussion privately." "No," Rowan's voice was firm. "No more private discussions, no more negotiations, no more trying to buy or threaten what matters most to me." He looked at Milena, then at Luca, who was still calculating chandelier angles. "Yeah, this is my family now, my future, my choice." Lawrence stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "If you do this, if you throw away everything we've built, don't expect to ever come back." "I'm not throwing anything away," Rowan smiled slightly. "I'm building something better, something real." He squeezed Luca's shoulder gently. "Ready to see your telescope, buddy?" Luca nodded, his calculations complete. "The chandelier is 0.02 degrees off center. We'll send them a strongly worded letter about their measurements," Rowan promised, making Milena's heart squeeze with love for them both. As they walked away, leaving his parents surrounded by whispers and camera phones, Rowan reached for Milena's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me with this, with everything." She interlaced their fingers, feeling the steady strength of him. "Thank you for making it worth the risk." Above them, the chandelier's crystals caught the light, scattering it like stars across the marble floor. Milena watched her son's face as he tracked each point of light, finding patterns in their dance. Watched Rowan watching him, love evident in every careful movement, and she realized that some measurements couldn't be calculated with rulers or protractors. Some things could only be measured in the space between heartbeats, in the quiet moments between chaos, in the brave choices that changed everything. Tonight, Surrounded by cameras and whispers and judgment, they would face whatever came next, together, as a family. But first, they had stars to count. 1 month after the gala, Milena stood in her small kitchen, surrounded by moving boxes and measuring tape. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, catching the diamond ring she still wasn't used to wearing. Simple, elegant, with tiny stars engraved inside the band. "Mom?" Luca's voice drifted from his bedroom. "These measurements are incorrect." She found him frowning at a stack of boxes, ruler in hand. "What's wrong, baby?" "The volume calculations don't account for book weight distribution. We need to recalibrate." "I think you're right." Rowan appeared in the doorway, his usually pristine clothes dusty from packing. "Want to help me work out the correct formula?" Luca nodded seriously, already reaching for his notebook. 1 month hadn't changed his need for precision, but it had changed how he handled disruptions. Now, instead of panicking when measurements were wrong, he solved the problem methodically. Together, Milena watched them bend over the calculations, Rowan patient and focused, as Luca explained his theories about mass distribution. The sight still made her heart squeeze. This powerful CEO, who'd walked away from his empire to sit on bedroom floors and measure moving boxes. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Stevens. "Everything okay with the move? Need any help?" "We're good," she typed back. "Luca's supervising the box measurements." "Of course he is." "Oh, and the board position paperwork came through. Congratulations, Director of Patient Services." She smiled, remembering his face when he'd offered her the promotion. "We need someone who understands both healthcare and special needs families," he'd said. "Someone who can help us serve patients like Luca better." The sound of footsteps on the stairs made her look up. Mrs. Henderson appeared, carrying a casserole dish. "Thought you could use lunch. How's the packing going?" "Ask the geometry team," Milena laughed, gesturing to where Rowan and Luca were now measuring box corners with digital protractors. "Still can't believe you're leaving me." Mrs. Henderson's eyes misted slightly. "Who's going to bring me late-night coffee and tell me about constellations?" "We're only moving 10 minutes away," Milena reminded her. "And you're still our official backup childcare, unless you're too busy with that new grandbaby coming." "Never too busy for my favorite boys." She set down the casserole, though I suppose they have each other now. They did. The thought still amazed Milena, how naturally Rowan had fit himself into their lives, how completely he'd embraced their routines and requirements. He'd found a house that perfectly balanced everyone's needs, close enough to keep Luca's school and therapy schedule, with a dedicated observatory room and a kitchen designed for their Thursday pizza-making traditions. "Mom," Luca appeared beside her, clutching his notebook. "We solved the volume distribution equation, but we need more boxes. Exactly 3 more, with reinforced corners." "Already got them." Rowan held up his phone. "They'll be here in 27 minutes. I ordered the same brand as the others, same dimensions." Luca's shoulders relaxed at this confirmation of consistency. "Good. Then we can maintain optimal stack alignment." "Speaking of alignment," Rowan said carefully, "I was thinking about dinner tonight, since it's Thursday." "Pizza night," Luca finished. "But the kitchen is packed." "True. But remember that Italian restaurant? The quiet one with the precise measurements?" Milena held her breath. They hadn't been back to Marco's since their first date, hadn't tested Luca with that kind of change. "The one with the living wall?" Luca asked. "Where the owner's son likes patterns?" "That's right. Marco asked about you. Said his son wants to show you their new geometric herb garden." Luca considered this, fingers moving in familiar patterns. "What time?" 6:15, Rowan said. "Same as always. And we can measure the herb patterns. Brought my special ruler just for that." Milena watched the conversation with tears threatening. A year ago, this kind of deviation from routine would have been impossible, but Rowan had taught them both that some changes could be beautiful, if measured carefully enough. "Okay," Luca decided, "but we need to finish the box calculations first." "Deal." Rowan's smile was gentle. "So I want to help me measure the moving truck capacity while your mum takes a break." Milena started to protest, but Mrs. Henderson touched her arm. "Let them handle it. Come have tea with me, one last time in my kitchen." An hour later, sitting in Mrs. Henderson's familiar apartment, Milena watched through the window as Rowan and Luca calculated truck dimensions. Her son's movements were excited, engaged, as he explained something about cubic feet and load distribution. "Yes, you know," Mrs. Henderson said softly, "I used to worry about you two. A single mum working herself to exhaustion, a special little boy who needed so much. But now, she smiled. Now I just see a family, complete. I was so scared, Milena admitted, of letting someone in, of disrupting Luca's world, of hoping. And now, before she could answer, a commotion outside drew their attention. A sleek black car had pulled into the parking lot, one Milena recognized. Regina Ellison stepped out, looking as elegant as ever, but something was different about her posture, less rigid somehow. She carried a large package wrapped in silver paper. Through the window, Milena watched Rowan step protectively in front of Luca, but Regina held up her hands in a gesture of peace. "I should go down," Milena said, standing. "Want backup?" "No. We need to handle this ourselves." By the time she reached the parking lot, Regina was speaking softly to Rowan while Luca continued his measurements, carefully ignoring the disruption. "Understand if you don't want it," Regina was saying, "but when I saw it, I thought of him." She held out the package. Rowan took it warily, then called, "Hey, buddy, want to help me measure something?" Luca looked up, assessed the situation, then approached with his ruler ready. Together, they carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a professional-grade telescope, smaller than Rowan's, but with incredibly precise digital controls. "It's calibrated to 0.001 degree accuracy," Regina said quietly. I did some research about astronomy and autism and family." Luca was already examining the telescope's mechanisms, his fingers moving over the controls with familiar precision. "Just the declination adjustment is exact," he announced, "like Carman's rulers. I'm not asking for forgiveness," Regina said, watching him, "or even acceptance. I wanted you to know I'm trying to understand." Milena saw the emotion cross Rowan's face, hope warring with caution, love battling hurt. Before he could respond, Luca spoke again. "The angle is wrong." They all turned to him. "What angle, baby?" Milena asked, her shoulders too tense. "Like the chandelier that night, 0.02 degrees off." A startled laugh escaped Regina, perhaps her first real laugh in years. "He's right. I am tense, scared, actually, of making more mistakes, of losing my son completely." "Mom," Rowan's voice was soft. "No, let me finish. I've spent my life measuring success in dollars and social status, but watching you these past months, the way you love them, the way you've built something real." She straightened her shoulders, correcting the angle Luca had noted. "I'd like to learn your kind of measurements, if you'll teach me." Milena held her breath, watching Rowan struggle with the weight of history and hope. But it was Luca who answered. "We have pizza tonight, at the restaurant with the herb garden. 6:15. He didn't look up from the telescope. The measurements there are usually accurate." The invitation, delivered in his precise, matter-of-fact way, brought tears to Regina's eyes. I would like that, very much. But no diamonds," he added firmly. "They refract light, disrupt astronomical observations." This time, Regina's laugh was real and warm. "I promise. No diamonds." She turned to Milena. "And no more interference, no more judgment, just a chance to learn. To be part of this, however you'll let me." Milena looked at Rowan, letting him make this choice. He nodded slowly. 6:15, he said. "Don't be late." Luca takes his scheduling very seriously. "I'm learning that accuracy matters," Regina said softly, "in all the important things." After she left, they stood in the parking lot, surrounded by moving boxes and new telescopes and the weight of moments that changed everything. "You okay?" Milena asked Rowan. He pulled her close, watching Luca adjust the telescope's settings. "Yeah, I think I am. We all are, because that's what family meant." She was learning. Not perfect measurements or flawless angles, but the willingness to keep trying, to adjust and recalculate and make space for love in all its imperfect forms. "Mum," Luca called, "the moving truck's volume coefficients need revision." "Coming, baby." She squeezed Rowan's hand. "Far ready to do some measuring." His smile was as bright as the stars they'd learned to count together, always. And so, surrounded by boxes and calculations and the endless possibilities of love, they began again, together, measuring each moment, each joy, each challenge with the tools they'd built as a family, one careful angle at a time. Epilogue: The Geometry of Love. 1 year later. The observatory room's dome opened silently to the summer night sky, revealing a canvas of stars that seemed close enough to touch. Luca stood at his telescope, the one Regina had given him, now upgraded with even more precise digital controls, carefully adjusting the coordinates. 0.003 degrees west, he announced. The alignment is optimal. Perfect timing. Rowan entered with 3 hot chocolates on a tray, each mug measured to exactly the same level. Your mum's on her way up. You ready to show her? Luca nodded, double-checking his calculations in the notebook that now contained a year's worth of astronomical observations. His hands moved with confidence as he made final adjustments, no longer needing anyone to verify his measurements. Footsteps on the stairs announced Milena's arrival. She'd changed out of her clinic director's suit into comfortable clothes, her engagement ring catching starlight as she accepted her hot chocolate. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Board meeting ran over." "You're not late," Luca corrected without looking up from his telescope. "Asked 9.7 minutes until optimal viewing angle. He's been tracking the convergence for weeks," Rowan explained, sliding an arm around her waist. "Wouldn't even tell me what he's found." They waited in comfortable silence while Luca completed his preparations. Through the observatory's windows, they could see the lights of their neighborhood, the garden where they still made Thursday night pizzas, the path to Mrs. Henderson's new house just 2 streets over. "They're ready," Luca announced finally. "Mom first." Milena approached the telescope, following his precise instructions for eye position and focus. Through the lens, she saw a cluster of stars arranged in an unfamiliar pattern. "What am I looking at, baby?" "A new constellation." His voice held the excitement that now came more frequently, more naturally. "I discovered it 3 weeks ago. Been calculating its position every night." "He's been very secretive about it," Rowan added. "Wouldn't even let his grandmother help with the measurements when she visited yesterday." The mention of Regina brought a smile to Milena's face. The weekly dinners with Rowan's mother had become surprisingly pleasant, filled with stories and star charts, and Regina's earnest attempts to understand their world. "Look at the star pattern," Luca directed. "What do you see?" Milena adjusted the focus slightly. The stars seemed to form a shape. "Is that a heart?" Luca confirmed. "But not a standard symmetrical heart. This one's real, imperfect. Like the car man says, love should be." Tears filled Milena's eyes as she straightened. "Oh, baby." "The angles aren't standard," he continued, his fingers moving in excited patterns. "They vary by 0.004 degrees from traditional heart iconography, but that makes them better, more accurate to actual emotional geometry." "Emotional geometry?" Rowan's voice was soft with wonder. "Yes, like us." Luca made a minor adjustment to the telescope's position. Not perfect angles, but perfect anyway. Milena watched as her son showed Rowan the constellation, explaining the mathematical principles behind its discovery. Her brilliant, beautiful boy, who once struggled to speak, now gave detailed lectures about stellar cartography. Who once feared any deviation from routine, now helped design new family traditions. She thought of all the measurements that had brought them here, the precise angles of morning routines, the careful calculations of change and growth, the infinite variables of learning to love and trust and hope. "I submitted it for official registration," Luca announced. "To the International Astronomical Union." "You did?" Rowan's voice cracked slightly. "When?" "Last week. Grandmother helped with the paperwork." He shuffled through his notebook. "I named it." "What did you name it, baby?" Milena asked softly. "Familia Mensura." He pronounced the Latin carefully. "It means family of measurements," Rowan translated, his eyes shining. "Yes." Luca turned back to his telescope. "Because that's what we are. Different angles, different calculations, but making patterns together." Milena felt Rowan's arms slide around her as they watched their son map his stars. Through the dome's opening, the night sky stretched endless and beautiful, full of new constellations waiting to be discovered. 0.004 degrees, she whispered, leaning into her husband's embrace. The variance he mentioned, in the heart's angles." She smiled. "It turns out love doesn't need perfect measurements after all." "No," Rowan agreed softly, watching Luca add another precise note to his calculations. "But it helps to have someone who knows how to measure what matters." Above them, the stars of Familia Mensura glittered like diamonds in the velvet sky, a testament to the geometry of their love, the mathematics of their family, the precise calculations that had brought them all home, not to the perfect life they'd once imagined, to the beautifully imperfect one they'd built together, measured in love, infinite degrees of joy. "Your opinion matters. What did you learn from this story?" Have you ever had to measure love in unexpected ways? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time. Black maid charms millionaire by speaking. Dutch on the phone. He can't stop thinking about her. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She never imagined that answering one phone call would change her entire life. Kelly Amara Coleman adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses for the third time in 10 minutes, a nervous habit that had followed her since college. The Seattle afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of the Emerald Crown Boutique Hotel, casting geometric shadows across the marble floor she'd been polishing for the past hour. Her long, straight hair was pulled back in an elegant bun that somehow managed to look effortless, despite the chaos swirling in her mind. The WhatsApp notification buzzed again on her phone, tucked into her uniform pocket. Another reminder about Nia's occupational therapy session at 4:30. Kelly's stomach tightened as she mentally calculated the cost, $350 she barely had, but couldn't afford not to spend. "Focus, Kelly," she whispered to herself, adjusting her glasses once more as she moved the microfiber cloth in precise, methodical circles. The Virgo in her demanded perfection, even in something as simple as cleaning floors. Her AirPods delivered the smooth vocals of Zay directly to her ears, a small comfort in the midst of her daily grind. The rhythm helped her move with an unconscious grace that drew glances from hotel guests. At 28, Kelly possessed a striking silhouette that commanded attention even in her simple grey uniform, but she remained blissfully unaware of the admiring looks. The hotel phone at the front desk rang sharply, cutting through her musical sanctuary. Kelly glanced around. The receptionist was nowhere to be seen, probably on another extended smoke break. She sighed, removed one AirPod, and approached the mahogany desk. "Emerald Crown Boutique Hotel. How may I assist you today?" Kelly's voice carried the warm professionalism she'd perfected over 2 years of working here. The voice on the other end was frantic, speaking rapid Dutch with a thick accent. Kelly's eyes widened slightly as she recognized the language, memories of her high school exchange program in Amsterdam flooding back. The caller was clearly distressed, something about a reservation mix-up and a wedding anniversary dinner. Without hesitation, Kelly switched to fluent Dutch, her voice taking on a soothing, melodic quality. "Natuurlijk kan ik u helpen. Vertel me wat aan de hand is." "Of course I can help you. Tell me what's happening." From across the lobby, Brino James Whitaker froze mid-step. He'd been heading toward the elevator, his mind occupied with quarterly reports and inventory projections for his Whitaker's market chain. But that voice, warm honey mixed with linguistic precision, stopped him cold. Brino was 32, successful beyond most people's dreams, with the kind of confident presence that filled a room. His green eyes, sharp and intelligent, were now completely focused on the woman behind the desk. He watched as she gracefully handled the Dutch conversation, her free hand unconsciously adjusting her glasses as she took notes. "Dat is geen probleem. Ik zal ervoor zorgen dat alles perfect geregeld wordt voor uw verjaardag. That's no problem. I'll make sure everything is arranged perfectly for your anniversary." Kelly's voice carried genuine warmth as she assured the caller that their special evening would be saved. Brino felt something shift in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. As a Leo, he was accustomed to being the center of attention, the one who commanded rooms and closed deals. But this woman, this beautiful stranger speaking Dutch like poetry, had completely captivated him without even knowing he existed. Kelly finished the call with a gentle "tot ziens" and immediately reached for her phone to contact the hotel's restaurant manager. She was already 3 steps ahead, solving the problem before it could become a crisis. "Excuse me." Breno's voice was deeper than Kelly expected. When she looked up to find him standing directly in front of the desk, she pushed her glasses up her nose, a blush creeping across her cheeks. "I'm sorry, sir. I know I shouldn't have taken that call, but the receptionist was—" "You speak Dutch." It wasn't a question. Breno's green eyes held her gaze with an intensity that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. Yes. I spent a summer in Amsterdam during high school." Kelly's fingers found her glasses again, adjusting them nervously. "Is there something I can help you with?" Braino's hand drummed lightly against the marble countertop, an unconscious habit when his mind was racing. He studied her face, taking in the intelligence behind her glasses, the natural beauty that needed no enhancement, the way she carried herself with quiet dignity despite her obvious nerves. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Kelly. Kelly Coleman." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, wondering why this handsome stranger was looking at her like she'd just solved the mysteries of the universe. "Kelly Coleman," Braino repeated, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. "That was incredible what you just did. That couple was probably devastated about their anniversary dinner." Kelly's smile was genuine now, warm and radiant. Everyone deserves to have their special moments protected. It wasn't a big deal. But Braino knew it was a big deal. In his world of calculated business moves and strategic partnerships, genuine kindness was rare. Here was someone who went out of her way to help strangers, who spoke multiple languages, who possessed a beauty that was both striking and humble. "I'm Braino," he said, extending his hand. "Braino Whitaker." Kelly's eyes widened slightly as she shook his hand, recognizing the name from the Whitaker's Market logos throughout Seattle. Her mind immediately went to the stark difference between his world and hers. His designer polo shirt probably cost more than she made in a week. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Whitaker," she said formally, pulling her hand back and reaching for her cleaning supplies. "I should get back to work." "Wait," Braino said quickly, his Leo confidence wavering for the first time in years. Would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd love to hear more about your time in Amsterdam." Kelly's heart raced as she looked at this successful, handsome man who seemed genuinely interested in her stories. But reality crashed back quickly. Nia's therapy appointment, the medical bills, the vast ocean between their lives. "I don't think that would be appropriate," she said quietly, adjusting her glasses one final time before gathering her cleaning cart. As she walked away, Braino watched her go, his mind already replaying every word of their conversation. He couldn't remember the last time someone had affected him so profoundly with such simple kindness. Kelly's phone buzzed with another WhatsApp reminder, pulling her back to her responsibilities. But as she resumed cleaning, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted in her carefully controlled world. And for the first time in months, she found herself wondering what if. What would you risk for a chance at something real? Have you ever met someone who changed your perspective in just one conversation? 3 days later, Kelly still couldn't get those green eyes out of her mind. She stood in the cramped kitchen of her studio apartment, stirring instant coffee with one hand while scrolling through her Mint app with the other. The numbers glowed mockingly from her phone screen. Checking account balance, $247. Nia's therapy bill due tomorrow, $350. Her stomach dropped as she did the mental math she'd already calculated a dozen times. "Kelly," Nia's voice carried from the living room, where she sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, completely absorbed in drawing geometric patterns on her iPad. At 15, her sister possessed an artistic gift that never ceased to amaze Kelly, even during the difficult moments. "What is it, sweetheart?" Kelly called back, taking a sip of the bitter coffee and immediately regretting the cheap brand she'd been forced to buy. "The purple marker isn't working right. It's making the wrong shade." Kelly smiled despite her financial stress. Nia's attention to detail rivaled her own, though it manifested differently. Where Kelly organized everything into lists and schedules, Nia created perfect, intricate worlds of color and pattern. Her phone buzzed with a WhatsApp message from Taryn. "Still can't talk. Lawyer meeting at 2. Rain check on lunch?" Kelly stared at the message, feeling the familiar pang of loneliness that had become her constant companion. Taryn had been pulling away for months now, lost in the emotional wreckage of her divorce. Kelly understood. She really did. But understanding didn't make the isolation any easier to bear. She opened her notes app and added to her growing list, "Call therapist about payment plan, ask manager about extra shifts, research financial assistance programs." The familiar act of organizing her thoughts provided a small measure of comfort. "Kelly, someone's at the door," Nia announced without looking up from her iPad. Kelly frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors were rare in their building. She peered through the peephole and nearly dropped her coffee mug. Braino Whitaker stood in her narrow hallway, looking somehow both confident and uncertain. He wore dark jeans and a simple navy sweater that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, but his usual self-assured demeanor seemed slightly shaken. Kelly's heart hammered against her ribcage as she unlocked the deadbolt. "Mr. Whitaker," What are you doing here? I asked the hotel manager for your address, Bruno said, then immediately looked embarrassed. I know how that sounds. I promise I'm not some kind of stalker. I just couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. Kelly stepped into the hallway, pulling the door nearly closed behind her. She was acutely aware of her faded jeans and oversized melanin queen t-shirt, of the cramped apartment behind her that probably could fit in his closet. This isn't appropriate, she said quietly, adjusting her glasses. I could lose my job if the hotel thinks I'm involved with guests. I'm not staying at the hotel, Bruno said quickly. I was just visiting the restaurant to discuss a catering contract for my stores. Kelly, please. I know this is unconventional, but I can't get you out of my head. His honesty was disarming. Kelly noticed how his fingers drummed lightly against his thigh, the same nervous habit from their first meeting. For all his success and confidence, he seemed genuinely vulnerable standing in her dingy hallway. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Because you're real, Bruno said simply. Do you know how rare that is? You helped those strangers without hesitation, switched languages like it was nothing, and you have this light about you that's just extraordinary. Kelly felt heat rise in her cheeks. No one had ever called her extraordinary. Responsible, reliable, organized. Those were the words people usually used. But extraordinary. I'm not, she whispered. I'm just trying to get by like everyone else. That's exactly what makes you extraordinary. Bruno stepped closer, and Kelly caught a hint of his cologne, something expensive and warm. Look, I know we come from different worlds. I know this seems crazy, but would you at least consider having coffee with me? Just coffee, no expectations. Kelly's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, probably a reminder about Nia's upcoming appointment. The sound brought her crashing back to reality. I can't, she said, even as every part of her wanted to say yes. My life is complicated right now. My sister needs me, and I have responsibilities that... Kelly, who is it? Nia's voice drifted through the door, followed by the sound of her iPad falling to the floor. A meltdown was brewing. Kelly could hear it in her sister's tone. I have to go, Kelly said quickly, panic rising in her chest. When Nia got overwhelmed, it could take hours to calm her down. Kelly, wait. Bruno reached out as if to touch her arm, then stopped himself. Please don't come here again, Kelly said, though the words felt like glass in her throat. This can't happen. We can't happen. She slipped back into her apartment and locked the door, leaning against it as her heart threatened to beat out of her chest. Through the thin wood, she could hear Bruno's footsteps echoing down the hallway. Kelly? Nia's voice was sharper now, tinged with the edge that meant she was losing control. The colors are all wrong. Everything is wrong. Kelly rushed to her sister's side, finding her rocking slightly with her hands pressed over her ears. The iPad lay forgotten, its screen displaying a half-finished mandala in vibrant purples and blues. Hey, it's okay, Kelly said softly, sitting beside Nia without touching her. She'd learned that physical contact during these moments only made things worse. Tell me what's wrong with the colors. They don't match what I see in my head, Nia said, her voice muffled. And there was a man's voice in the hallway, and it was too loud, and now everything feels scratchy. Kelly's chest tightened with guilt. Her moment of weakness had disrupted Nia's carefully maintained equilibrium. This was exactly why she couldn't afford distractions like handsome millionaires with kind eyes. I'm sorry about the noise, Kelly said. How about we dim the lights and I'll get your weighted blanket? As she helped Nia settle into her calming routine, Kelly's phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number with a text message. I meant what I said. You're extraordinary. B. Kelly stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. But even as she focused on comforting Nia, even as she mentally rehearsed the conversation she'd have to have with the therapy center about a payment extension, she couldn't shake the memory of how Bruno had looked at her, like she was worth fighting for. And that terrified her more than any unpaid bill ever could. Kelly never shopped at Whitaker's Market until her regular grocery store ran out of Nia's favorite brand of crackers. Standing in the gleaming aisles of the upscale supermarket, Kelly felt distinctly out of place. Everything here seemed to sparkle under the warm LED lighting, from the artisanal cheese displays to the organic produce section that looked more like a farmer's market than a grocery store. She adjusted her glasses nervously, clutching her carefully written shopping list, a habit that helped her stay within her tight budget. Her phone buzzed with a notification from her BetterHelp app. Don't forget your session with Dr. Martinez today at 4 p.m. Kelly swiped it away quickly. The online therapy sessions were one of the few luxuries she allowed herself. But even at the reduced rate for low-income patients, they stretched her finances thin. "Excuse me, miss. Can I help you find something?" Kelly turned to find a teenage employee with kind eyes and a name tag that read Marcus. His genuine smile reminded her of the customer service training she'd received at the hotel. Everyone deserved to feel welcome, regardless of their shopping cart contents. "I'm looking for goldfish crackers," Kelly said. "The pretzel kind specifically. My sister is very particular about textures." "Aisle 7, right next to the regular goldfish," Marcus said. "My little brother's the same way about his snacks." "Autism?" Kelly nodded, surprised by his understanding tone. "She's 15. Some days the only thing she'll eat for lunch." Marcus's expression grew knowing. "I get it, my brother's 12. Mum says as long as he's eating something, we're winning." As Kelly made her way to aisle 7, she nearly collided with a shopping cart at the corner. She looked up to apologize and felt her breath catch in her throat. Breno stood frozen, his own cart filled with what looked like ingredients for an elaborate dinner: fresh salmon, asparagus, a bottle of wine that probably cost more than her weekly food budget. He wore a casual button-down shirt and jeans, but somehow managed to look effortlessly elegant even while grocery shopping. "Kelly," he said, and her name sounded different in his voice, warmer, more intimate than it had any right to be. "Mr. Whitaker." Kelly gripped her cart handle tighter, hyper-aware of her own modest purchases: generic pasta, store-brand tomato sauce, and the discount bread that was buy one, get one free. "Breno, please," he said softly. His fingers drummed against his cart handle, that nervous habit she was beginning to recognize. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Your store is closer to Naya's therapy center," Kelly explained, then immediately regretted oversharing. "I don't usually shop here." An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sounds of other shoppers and the soft jazz playing over the store's speakers. Kelly started to push her cart past him, but Breno gently touched her arm. "Kelly, wait. About the other day, I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have shown up at your apartment like that. It was presumptuous and probably frightening." His sincerity caught her off guard. In her experience, men like him, successful, powerful men, didn't apologize for taking what they wanted. They certainly didn't worry about whether they'd frightened someone. "It's okay," she said quietly, adjusting her glasses. "I understand why you did it." "Do you?" Breno's green eyes searched her face. "Because I'm not sure I do. I've never chased after someone like this before. I've never felt so unsettled by meeting someone." Kelly's heart fluttered traitorously. She could see other shoppers beginning to notice them. A beautiful black woman in thrift store clothes, talking to the obviously wealthy owner of the store chain. She felt exposed, vulnerable. "This is your store," she said, changing the subject. "Do you always do your own shopping?" Breno's smile was rueful. "I like to stay connected to the business, see what customers actually buy, how the staff interacts with people. Plus, cooking relaxes me." "You cook?" Kelly couldn't hide her surprise. "Badly," Breno admitted with a laugh that transformed his entire face, "but enthusiastically. Tonight I'm attempting salmon with some kind of herb crust I saw on Instagram. It'll probably be a disaster." Despite herself, Kelly smiled. There was something endearing about this successful businessman admitting to Instagram-inspired cooking failures. "The key with herb crusts is not to overthink it," she found herself saying. "Fresh herbs, a little panko, some lemon zest. Keep it simple." "How you cook?" Now it was Breno's turn to look surprised. Kelly felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I have to. Nia has very specific preferences, and takeout gets expensive. I've gotten creative with budget meals over the years." Something shifted in Breno's expression, a kind of admiration that made Kelly's stomach flutter. "I bet you could teach me a thing or two." The comment hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Kelly's rational mind screamed warnings. This was dangerous territory, the kind of conversation that led to complications she couldn't afford. But something in his tone, genuine and almost vulnerable, made her want to keep talking. "Kelly Coleman," a voice interrupted from behind her. She turned to see Dr. Sarah Chen, Naya's occupational therapist, approaching with her own shopping cart. "Dr. Chen, hi," Kelly said, grateful for the interruption and mortified by it at the same time. "I was hoping to catch you before Nia's session this afternoon," Dr. Chen said, her expression kind but professional. "Could we talk about adjusting her treatment plan? I think she's ready for some new challenges." Kelly's stomach dropped. New challenges usually meant additional costs. "Of course, is there somewhere we could—" "Actually, there's a Starbucks right next to the therapy center," Dr. Chen suggested. "We could meet there after her session." Kelly's mind immediately went to her dwindling checking account balance. A coffee at Starbucks wasn't in her budget, but she couldn't exactly explain that to Naya's therapist. "That sounds perfect," she said, forcing a smile. Dr. Chen nodded and moved on with her shopping. Kelly stood there for a moment, the weight of financial stress settling back on her shoulders like a familiar coat. "Everything okay?" Breno's voice was gentle, concerned. Kelly looked at him. This man who probably spent more on lunch than she spent on groceries, and felt the vast distance between their worlds more acutely than ever. "Everything's fine," she lied, adjusting her glasses. "I should get going. Nia doesn't like it when I'm late." She started to push her cart away, but Breno's voice stopped her. "Kelly?" When she turned back, his expression was serious, almost vulnerable. "I know you said we can't happen, but I want you to know I can't stop thinking about you, about how you make me feel like maybe there's more to life than quarterly reports and profit margins." Kelly's heart ached with longing and impossibility. "Breno, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know." As Kelly walked away, her cartwheels squeaking slightly on the polished floor, she felt Breno's eyes following her. At the checkout, she handed her carefully organized coupons to the cashier and tried not to think about the man who'd looked at her like she was the most fascinating woman in the world. But as she loaded her meager groceries into her second-hand Toyota Corolla, Kelly couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in years, someone had made her wonder what her life might look like if she allowed herself to want more than just survival. The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m., just as Kelly was finally drifting off to sleep. "I know it's late, but I can't sleep. Keep thinking about what you said about herb crusts. The salmon was actually edible. Thank you. B." Kelly stared at her phone screen in the darkness of her studio apartment, listening to Nia's steady breathing from the pull-out bed across the room. She should delete the message. She should block his number. Instead, she found herself typing back. "Glad it worked out. Cooking disasters are the worst." The response came immediately, like he'd been waiting by his phone. "What's your biggest cooking disaster?" Kelly smiled despite herself, remembering a particularly catastrophic attempt at making Nia's birthday cake 3 years ago. Tried to make a 3-layer cake from scratch, forgot the baking powder. It came out looking like pancakes. Nia cried for an hour. "Ouch! What did you do?" "Drove to 3 different stores at 9 p.m. until I found a decent cake. Learned my lesson about trying to be Martha Stewart on a McDonald's budget." There was a longer pause before his next message. "I would have helped if I'd known you then." Kelly's breath caught in her throat. The simple statement carried so much weight, so much possibility. She set her phone on her nightstand without responding, but sleep eluded her for hours. 2 days later, Kelly stood outside the Starbucks next to Nia's therapy center, checking her bank balance one more time before going inside. Dr. Chen's quick coffee had turned into an hour-long discussion about Nia's progress and new therapeutic approaches that would cost an additional $150 per month. Kelly ordered the cheapest drink on the menu, a tall black coffee, and found a table in the corner. She opened her notes app and began updating her endless lists, trying to figure out how to make the numbers work, cancel her therapy sessions, pick up weekend shifts at the hotel. Both options felt like steps backward. "Kelly?" She looked up to find Breno standing beside her table, holding what looked like an expensive coffee drink topped with foam art. He wore dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his green eyes even more striking. "Are you following me?" Kelly asked, but there was no accusation in her voice, just exhaustion. "I could ask you the same thing," Breno said with a gentle smile. "This is my usual Starbucks. I come here every Tuesday after my meetings downtown." He gestured to the empty chair across from her. "May I?" Kelly wanted to say no. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was exactly the kind of complication she couldn't afford. But she was tired, bone-deep tired from carrying everything alone, and his presence felt like a warm blanket on a cold day. "I suppose," she said, closing her phone quickly. Breno sat down, and Kelly noticed how he seemed to fill the space with his quiet confidence. His fingers drummed lightly against his cup, that nervous habit that somehow made him more human, more approachable. "How's your sister doing?" he asked. "Nia, right?" Kelly's surprise must have shown on her face because Breno's expression grew almost shy. "You mentioned her name when we talked at the store," he explained. "She's the one who likes specific textures?" The fact that he'd remembered such a small detail made something warm unfurl in Kelly's chest. Most people, when they learned about Nia's autism, either offered empty platitudes or changed the subject entirely. She's doing well, Kelly said carefully. Her occupational therapist thinks she's ready for some new challenges. That's good news, isn't it? Kelly's laugh was hollow. Good news that I can't afford. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and immediately Kelly felt heat rise in her cheeks. She adjusted her glasses nervously, wishing she could take back the moment of vulnerability. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I shouldn't have said that. You don't need to hear about my financial problems. Why not? Breno's voice was gentle. We're friends, aren't we? Friends. The word hung between them, loaded with possibility and limitation. Kelly studied his face, looking for signs of pity or condescension, but found only genuine concern. Are we? She asked softly. I'd like to be, Breno said. I know this is complicated. I know we come from different worlds, but I like talking to you, Kelly. You make me think about things differently. How so? Breno was quiet for a moment, his fingers continuing their gentle drumming against his cup. I've spent the last 10 years focused on growth, expansion, profit margins. Success meant bigger numbers, more stores, higher revenue. But when I talk to you, I remember that success should also mean making a difference, helping people, creating something meaningful. Kelly felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the careful walls she'd built around her heart. And what would you do if you wanted to make a difference? I don't know yet, Breno admitted, but I think you might have some ideas. Their eyes met across the small table, and Kelly felt the pull again, that magnetic connection that had nothing to do with his money or her circumstances, and everything to do with the way he looked at her, like she mattered. I should go, Kelly said, though she made no move to leave. Nia will be finished with therapy soon. Can I ask you something? Breno's voice was careful, respectful. Why do you work so hard to keep me at a distance? And please don't say it's because we're from different worlds. There's something else. Kelly stared down at her nearly empty coffee cup, gathering the courage to be honest. Because I can't afford to want things I can't have, she said finally. Do you know what it's like to choose between your own therapy sessions and your sister's medication? To calculate the cost of every coffee, every bus ride, every moment of happiness? I can't afford to fall for someone whose life is so different from mine that we might as well be living on different planets. Breno leaned forward, his green eyes intense. What if the planets could align? They can't, Kelly whispered, but even as she said it, she could feel her resolve wavering. They could, Breno said softly, if we wanted them to. Kelly's phone buzzed with a text from Nia. Therapy is done. Where are you? Reality crashed back over her like cold water. She stood quickly, gathering her purse and her carefully maintained composure. I have to go, she said. Kelly, wait. But she was already walking away, her heart pounding with the terrifying realization that she was starting to believe him, and that scared her more than any unpaid bill ever could. The phone call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday, shattering Kelly's restless sleep like glass. Miss Coleman, this is Dr. Rodriguez from Seattle Children's Hospital. Your sister Nia was brought in by ambulance about an hour ago. Kelly's world tilted sideways. She sat up so quickly that her glasses fell off, her hands shaking as she fumbled for them in the darkness. What happened? Is she okay? She's stable now, but she had a severe allergic reaction. The paramedics said she was found unconscious in your apartment building's laundry room. A neighbor heard her fall and called 911. Kelly's mind raced, trying to piece together what could have gone wrong. Nia never went to the laundry room alone. It was one of their safety rules. The fluorescent lights and chemical smells usually overwhelmed her senses. I'm coming right now, Kelly said, already pulling on yesterday's jeans with one hand while holding the phone with the other. The Uber ride to the hospital felt endless. Kelly stared out the window at Seattle's empty streets, replaying the evening in her mind. Nia had seemed fine when Kelly left for her night shift at the hotel. They'd watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine together, shared a bowl of popcorn, and Nia had been working on a new digital art piece on her iPad. What had changed? What had Kelly missed? At the hospital, Kelly found Nia in the pediatric emergency room, looking small and fragile against the white sheets. Her sister's usually bright eyes were puffy and red, an oxygen monitor clipped to her finger. Kelly! Nia's voice was hoarse but relieved. The lights here are too bright and everything smells like cleaning products. I know, baby, I know, Kelly said, fighting back tears as she gently took Nia's hand. Can you tell me what happened? I was trying to wash your work uniform, Nia said quietly. You fell asleep after your shower, and I knew you had to work again tomorrow. But then I couldn't breathe and my skin felt like it was on fire. Kelly's heart broke. Nia had been trying to help, to take care of her the way Kelly always took care of Nia, But something in the industrial-strength detergents used in their building's shared laundry room had triggered a reaction. Dr. Rodriguez appeared beside the bed, her expression kind but serious. "We've given her epinephrine and antihistamines. The reaction is under control, but we need to keep her for observation. We also need to discuss getting her an EpiPen prescription and allergy testing to identify the specific trigger." Kelly nodded, her mind already calculating costs she couldn't afford. Emergency room visits, allergy specialists, EpiPens. The financial avalanche was already starting. "Miss Coleman?" Dr. Rodriguez's voice was gentle. "There's also the matter of the hospital bill. Our financial counselor can speak with you about payment plans if needed." Kelly's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, probably her manager wondering why she wasn't at work. She'd already missed 2 shifts this month when Nia had a particularly difficult day, and the hotel's attendance policy was strict. "I understand," Kelly said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. "Whatever she needs." Over the next 6 hours, Kelly sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair beside Nia's bed, watching monitors and listening to the sounds of the hospital. Her phone died around 5 a.m., cutting off her connection to the outside world. She'd called in sick to work, used her emergency PTO, and now faced the very real possibility of losing her job. When Nia finally fell into a peaceful sleep around dawn, Kelly allowed herself to cry, quiet, exhausted tears that she wiped away quickly when a nurse passed by. "Kelly?" She looked up to find Breno standing in the doorway, looking disheveled and concerned. He wore sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt, his hair mussed like he'd driven straight from bed. "How did you—" Kelly started. "You mentioned Seattle Children's before," Breno said quietly, stepping into the room. "When you didn't respond to my texts, I got worried. I called the main desk and asked if there was a Nia Coleman registered." Kelly stared at him, processing the fact that he'd been worried enough to track her down, that he'd cared enough to remember details about her life that she'd barely shared. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, but there was no strength behind the words. "Neither should you alone," Breno said. He pulled another plastic chair close to hers and sat down. "What happened?" Kelly found herself telling him everything, about Nia's attempt to help with laundry, the allergic reaction, the mounting medical bills she couldn't afford. Breno listened without interruption, his presence solid and comforting in the sterile hospital room. "The EpiPen alone will cost $300, Kelly said, staring at her hands. "And that's with insurance. The allergy testing is another $500, and if she needs to see a specialist—" She trailed off, overwhelmed. "Kelly," Breno started. "Don't," Kelly said quickly, knowing where his thoughts were heading. "Please don't offer to pay for it. I can't take your money." "Why not?" Breno's voice was frustrated. "If I can help, if I can make this easier for you, why won't you let me?" Kelly looked at him then, really looked at him. His green eyes were tired but determined, his jaw set with the stubborn resolve she was beginning to recognize. He genuinely wanted to help, she realized. This wasn't about pity or charity. He cared about her, about Nia. "Because then what happens next time?" Kelly asked softly. "And the time after that? What happens when you get tired of rescuing us?" "What makes you think I'd get tired?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and fear. Kelly felt the walls around her heart cracking, threatening to crumble entirely. "Everyone does," she whispered. "Eventually." Breno reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "I'm not everyone, Kelly." Before she could respond, Nia stirred in her bed, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around the room, taking in the machines and the unfamiliar man sitting beside her sister. "Kelly?" Nia's voice was small. "Are you in trouble because of me?" Kelly's heart shattered completely. She moved to Nia's bedside, smoothing her sister's hair with gentle fingers. "Never, sweetheart. You could never get me in trouble. I love you more than anything in this world." Nia's eyes drifted to Breno. "Who's he?" Kelly glanced back at Breno, seeing him through Nia's eyes, a stranger in their most vulnerable moment, yet somehow belonging there in a way that terrified and comforted her simultaneously. "He's—" Kelly started, then stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. "I'm a friend," Breno said gently, his voice softer than Kelly had ever heard it. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." Nia studied him with the direct gaze that sometimes made adults uncomfortable, but Breno met her eyes steadily, waiting for her verdict. "You make Kelly smile," Nia said finally, "even when she thinks I'm not looking." And in that moment, surrounded by beeping machines and antiseptic smells, Kelly realized that the most dangerous thing of all wasn't falling for Breno Whitaker. It was allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be happy. Kelly stared at the termination letter in her hands, the words blurring through her exhaustion. Due to excessive absences and failure to report for scheduled shifts, your employment with Emerald Crown Boutique Hotel is hereby terminated, effective immediately. She'd been expecting it, but seeing it in black and white still felt like a punch to the stomach. 3 days at the hospital with Nia, 2 missed shifts, and now no job, no income, no health insurance. Kelly? Nia's voice drifted from the couch where she sat wrapped in her weighted blanket, iPad balanced on her knees. You're making that face again. What face? Kelly asked, folding the letter and shoving it into her purse. The face you make when you're trying not to cry, Nia said matter-of-factly, like when we had to move out of the bigger apartment. Kelly's chest tightened. Sometimes Nia's perceptiveness was both a blessing and a curse. At 15, her sister understood far more about their financial struggles than Kelly wished she had to. I'm fine, sweetheart, Kelly lied, opening her laptop to start the dreaded job search. Just tired. Her phone buzzed with a text from Bruno. How's Nia feeling today and how are you holding up? Kelly stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. For 3 days, he'd been checking in, not pushy or overwhelming, just present. Yesterday, he'd sent lunch from a nearby deli without being asked. The day before, he'd somehow arranged for Nia's favorite art supplies to be delivered to their apartment. Small gestures that felt enormous to someone used to carrying everything alone. Kelly typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, Nia's better. I'm managing. His response came quickly. That's not what I asked. Kelly set her phone aside without answering and focused on uploading her resume to job sites. Housekeeping positions, retail associates, food service, anything that might hire someone with her limited experience and no current employment. A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Kelly peered through the peephole and sighed deeply before opening it. Taryn? Her best friend stood in the hallway looking uncharacteristically put together in a flowing maxi dress and ankle boots, her wavy hair freshly styled. But her eyes held the same distant quality they'd carried for months. I got your voicemail about Nia being in the hospital, Taryn said, stepping into the apartment. I'm sorry I didn't call back sooner. The divorce papers came through yesterday and I've been... She trailed off, fingering the stone necklace at her throat. It's okay, Kelly said, though it wasn't entirely true. She'd needed Taryn during those long hospital hours, had craved the comfort of her oldest friendship. Come in. Nia will be happy to see you. Taryn perched on the edge of Kelly's desk chair, her artistic eye taking in the cramped apartment with new awareness. This place is smaller than I remembered. We had to downsize, Kelly said simply. After Mom died and I became Nia's guardian, the expenses... Right, Taryn said, but Kelly could see her friend's attention drifting. The divorce had consumed Taryn completely, leaving little room for anyone else's problems. How are you doing? Kelly asked. Really? Taryn's laugh was hollow. I'm 30 years old, getting divorced and moving back in with my parents while I figure out my life. My art isn't selling. My savings are gone, and I can't remember the last time I felt like myself. She paused, fingering her necklace. But at least I don't have anyone depending on me. The comment stung, even though Kelly knew Taryn hadn't meant it as a criticism, but it highlighted the growing chasm between their lives. Taryn's problems felt manageable, temporary. Kelly's were relentless and permanent. Kelly, Nia appeared in the doorway, having abandoned her iPad. Taryn, did you bring new sketches? Taryn's face brightened genuinely for the first time since she'd arrived. I did, actually. Want to see? As Taryn pulled out her sketchbook and settled beside Nia on the couch, Kelly felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name. Watching her friend easily slip into the role of entertaining Nia reminded Kelly of how isolated she'd become, how much she'd been carrying alone. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Bruno. I have something I want to discuss with you. Could we meet for coffee or I could come to you? Kelly stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the screen. She could hear Taryn and Nia laughing together, a sound that should have brought her joy, but instead made her feel more alone than ever. Who keeps texting you? Taryn asked, looking up from the sketchbook. Just someone from work, Kelly lied. From the hotel? I thought you said they were understanding about the hospital thing. Kelly's silence stretched too long, and Taryn's expression sharpened with concern. Kelly, what aren't you telling me? They fired me, Kelly said quietly, the words feeling strange and final in her mouth. 3 days ago. Taryn's eyes widened. What? Why didn't you tell me? Because you have your own problems, Kelly said more sharply than she intended. Because every time I try to talk to you lately, You're dealing with lawyer meetings or packing or some new crisis with your ex-husband. The accusation hung in the air between them, heavy with months of unspoken resentment. Taryn's face flushed, her hand moving to her necklace. "That's not fair," Taryn said. "I've been going through hell." "And I haven't," Kelly's voice cracked. "I've been going through hell for years, Taryn, but I don't have the luxury of falling apart because someone else is counting on me." Nia looked up from the sketchbook, her eyes wide with distress. "Are you fighting?" Both women immediately turned to reassure her. Their conflict momentarily shelved, but the damage was done, the words had been spoken, the distance acknowledged. "We're not fighting, sweetheart," Kelly said gently. "We're just talking about grown-up stuff." But Nia's perceptive gaze moved between them, clearly unconvinced. Taryn stayed for another hour, the conversation stilted and careful. When she left, promising to call soon in a voice that suggested she might not, Kelly felt the weight of her isolation settle back over her like a familiar blanket. Her phone buzzed once more. Breno again. "Kelly, I know you're probably overwhelmed, but I think I have a solution that could help. Please let me try." Kelly stared at the message for a long time, her pride warring with her desperation. She thought about the termination letter, about the medical bills piling up, about the job applications that might or might not lead anywhere. She thought about Nia, who deserved stability and security, and a sister who wasn't constantly stressed about money. She thought about herself and whether she was strong enough to keep carrying everything alone. Finally, she typed back, "Okay, when?" And for the first time in days, Kelly allowed herself to hope that maybe asking for help wasn't the same thing as giving up. Kelly arrived at the small cafe in Fremont 15 minutes early, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her glasses for the dozenth time. She'd changed outfits 3 times that morning, finally settling on her best jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. Not because she was trying to impress Breno, she told herself, but because whatever he wanted to discuss sounded important, and she needed to feel put together. The cafe was cozy and unpretentious, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Nothing like the upscale establishments she'd imagined someone like Breno would frequent. Kelly ordered a simple coffee and found a corner table, her mind racing through possibilities. Maybe he wanted to offer her a job at one of his stores. Maybe he'd found someone who could help with Nia's medical bills. Maybe, and this thought made her stomach flutter dangerously, maybe this was about something else entirely. Kelly. She looked up to find Breno approaching, and her breath caught slightly. He wore dark jeans and a forest green Henley that made his eyes even more striking. His hair was slightly mussed, and she could see the faint shadow of exhaustion around his eyes. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I know this week has been hell." "How are you holding up?" Kelly asked, studying his face. "You look tired." Breno's smile was rueful. "I've been having trouble sleeping. Too much on my mind." His fingers drummed lightly against his coffee cup, that familiar nervous habit. "Actually, that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about." Kelly's pulse quickened. "Okay. I have a proposition for you," Breno said, then quickly held up a hand when Kelly's expression grew wary. "Not what you're thinking. This is business. Legitimate business." Kelly relaxed slightly, though she wasn't sure if the feeling in her chest was relief or disappointment. "I've been thinking about what you said," Breno continued, "about making a difference, about success meaning more than just profit margins. And I've been thinking about your skills, languages, organization, the way you handle people." "I don't understand," Kelly said. Breno leaned forward, his green eyes intense with excitement. "I want to expand Whitaker's market internationally, start with specialty import sections, maybe eventually open locations in other countries. But I need someone who understands different cultures, who can communicate across languages, who can help me navigate the complexities of international business." Kelly stared at him, processing his words. "You want to hire me?" "I want to make you my Director of International Development," Breno said. "It would mean travel, cultural research, building relationships with suppliers and distributors. The salary would be $80,000 to start, with full benefits and growth potential." Kelly's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down with shaking hands. $80,000 was more than she'd ever imagined making. It was enough to move into a better apartment, to pay for Nia's treatments without choosing between medication and groceries, to maybe even save for the future. "Breno," she said carefully, "I appreciate the offer, but I don't have any experience in international business. I cleaned hotel rooms and answered phones. I'm not qualified for a position like that." "You speak 3 languages fluently," Breno said. You handled that Dutch call like a professional diplomat. You understand customer service, you're organized, you're intelligent, and you have something most business executives lack: genuine empathy for people. Kelly's chest tightened with longing and suspicion. This isn't a real job. This is charity. No, Breno said firmly. This is opportunity. Kelly, I've been running these stores for 8 years, focused entirely on expansion within the US market, but I've been thinking small. There's a whole world of possibilities out there, and I need someone with your perspective to help me see them. My perspective. You understand what it's like to struggle, to make difficult choices, to prioritize what really matters. Most business consultants come from privilege. They've never had to choose between their own needs and someone else's. They don't understand real people, real problems, real solutions. Kelly felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. The offer was everything she'd never dared to dream of, but it felt too good to be true. What about Nia? She asked. This job would require travel. I can't leave her alone. We'll figure it out, Breno said without hesitation. Maybe she comes with us sometimes. Maybe we hire the best caregiver in Seattle for when you're away. Maybe we structure the travel so it's minimal to start. The point is, we make it work. Kelly's phone buzzed with a text from Nia. The art supply delivery came. Thank you for ordering new pencils. Kelly stared at the message, realizing she'd never ordered art supplies. Her eyes moved to Breno, who was suddenly very interested in his coffee. You sent those, she said. It wasn't a question. Breno's cheeks reddened slightly. Nia mentioned that her favorite pencils were getting worn down. I may have asked the art store what a serious young artist might need. Kelly felt something dangerous and warm unfurling in her chest. He'd been listening, really listening, to the small details of their lives. Why? She whispered. Why are you doing all this? Breno was quiet for a long moment, his fingers still drumming against his cup. When he looked up, his green eyes were vulnerable, almost raw. Because I'm falling in love with you, he said simply, and I want to build a life where that's possible. Kelly's breath caught in her throat. The words hung between them, honest and terrifying and beautiful. Breno, I know it's complicated, he said quickly. I know you have every reason to be suspicious of my motives, but Kelly, this job offer is real. It's something I've been considering for months, even before I met you. You'd be perfect for it, with or without this. He gestured between them. Kelly's mind raced, trying to separate the job opportunity from the personal confession, trying to think logically when her heart was pounding against her ribcage. I need time to think, she said. Of course, Breno said. Take all the time you need. But Kelly? He reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Don't let fear make this decision for you. You deserve good things. You deserve opportunities. You deserve to be happy. As Kelly walked back to her car, Breno's words echoing in her mind, she realized that for the first time in years, she had a choice to make that wasn't about survival. She had a choice about the kind of life she wanted to live, and that terrified her more than any crisis ever had. Kelly found herself standing outside the storage unit at 3 a.m., key in hand, unable to sleep. The concrete hallway smelled like dust and old cardboard, fluorescent lights humming overhead as she unlocked the metal door. Inside were the remnants of their previous life, boxes labeled Mom's Books, photo albums, and tucked in the far corner, her college textbooks and the certificates she'd never had a chance to use. She pulled out the manila folder containing her linguistics degree, her translation certification, letters of recommendation from professors who'd believed in her potential, evidence of dreams she'd carefully folded away when life demanded different sacrifices. Kelly? Nia's voice came from behind her. What are you doing here? Kelly turned to find her sister in the doorway, wearing her favorite galaxy print pajamas and holding her phone's flashlight. Even in the harsh lighting, Nia looked impossibly young. I couldn't sleep, Kelly said, gesturing to the scattered papers around her. I was just looking at some old things. Nia stepped into the storage unit, her bare feet silent on the concrete floor. She picked up one of Kelly's college textbooks, Advanced Portuguese Grammar, and flipped through pages filled with Kelly's careful notes. You used to speak Portuguese too, Nia said. It wasn't a question. I used to speak a lot of languages, Kelly said softly. Before Mom died? Kelly nodded, her throat tight. Before I became responsible for you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by the physical evidence of the life Kelly had set aside. Nia's fingers traced the edge of a photograph, Kelly at her college graduation, beaming with pride and possibility. You look happy here, Nia observed. I was, Kelly admitted. I thought I was going to change the world, become a translator for the UN maybe, help people communicate across cultures. You still could, Nia said simply. Kelly's laugh was hollow. Nia, sweetheart, that dream died a long time ago. I have responsibilities now. I have you. Nia was quiet for a long moment, her autistic mind processing in the methodical way Kelly had come to recognize and respect. When she spoke, her words were careful and deliberate. Kelly, do you know what my favorite thing about you is? What? You never make me feel like I'm holding you back, even when I have meltdowns, even when I'm expensive, even when I need extra help. You always make me feel like loving me is easy. Kelly's eyes filled with tears. It is easy, Nia. Loving you is the easiest thing I've ever done. Then why? Nia asked, her voice gentle but pointed. Do you make it so hard for other people to love you? The question hit Kelly like a physical blow. She stared at her sister, this remarkable 15-year-old who saw the world with such clarity. What do you mean? The man from the hospital, Nia said. Braino. He looks at you the way you look at me. Like loving you would be easy, but you keep pushing him away. Kelly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. It's complicated, Nia. Because he has money? Kelly was startled by the directness of the question. That's part of it. Is he a good person? Kelly thought about Braino's patience with Nia in the hospital, his gentle texts, checking on them, the way he'd remembered her favorite art supplies. Yes, I think he is. Does he make you happy? Kelly's breath caught. Yes. Then I don't understand why money makes it complicated, Nia said. If he's good, and he makes you happy and he loves you, why does it matter that he has more money than us? Kelly stared at her sister, amazed by the simple logic that cut through all her fears and complications. Out of the mouths of babes, or in this case, out of the mouth of a teenager who saw the world without the filters of pride and past hurt. Because I'm scared, Kelly admitted. I'm scared that if I let myself need him, if I let myself depend on him, he might leave. And then, where would we be? Where we are now, Nia suggested. You've been taking care of us by yourself for 3 years. If he leaves, you'll figure it out like you always do. But Kelly, what if he doesn't leave? What if he stays and helps and makes things better? Kelly's phone buzzed with a notification, an email from one of the job sites she'd been haunting. Thank you for your application. We regret to inform you that we have decided to move forward with other candidates. Another rejection. Another door closed. Kelly, Nia said softly, I know you think you have to protect me from everything, but maybe some things are worth the risk. They packed up the storage unit in silence, but Kelly carried her degree certificate back to the apartment. She placed it on her desk next to her laptop, where she could see it while she worked. The next morning, Kelly called Braino. Her hands shook as she dialed, but her voice was steady when he answered. Braino, it's Kelly. About your offer. Kelly, hi. Have you had time to think about it? Kelly looked around her tiny apartment, at Nia drawing on her iPad, at the stack of medical bills on the counter, at her degree certificate propped against her laptop screen. I want to know more, she said. About the position, about the responsibilities, about what this would really look like. Does that mean you're considering it? Kelly took a deep breath, thinking about Nia's words, about dreams deferred but not destroyed, about the possibility that maybe she could have both love and ambition. It means I'm ready to stop being afraid, she said. Kelly, Braino's voice was warm with relief and something deeper. I was hoping you'd say that. But I have conditions, Kelly said quickly. This has to be a real job with real expectations and real accountability. I won't be anyone's charity case. Understood. And Nia comes first. Always. If there's ever a conflict between work and what she needs, she wins. Absolutely. And we take this slow, the job, us, everything. I need time to adjust to make sure this is real. Whatever you need, Braino said. Kelly, I want you to know, I'm proud of you for taking this chance. As Kelly hung up the phone, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Excitement about the future. Terrifying, exhilarating, heart-pounding excitement. Nia looked up from her iPad, a knowing smile on her face. Good choice, Kelly. I hope so, Kelly said. I know so, Nia replied. Some things are worth the risk. And for the first time, Kelly allowed herself to believe that maybe she was one of those things too. 3 weeks into her new position, Kelly stood in the executive conference room of Whitaker's market headquarters, presenting her preliminary research on European specialty food imports to a room full of senior managers. Her hands were steady as she clicked through her PowerPoint slides, her voice confident as she explained market opportunities in Dutch cheese imports and Belgian chocolate partnerships. The past month had been a whirlwind of research, networking calls, and late nights spent learning the intricacies of international business law. Based on my analysis, Kelly said, adjusting her new glasses, designer frames Brino had insisted the company provide as part of her professional wardrobe budget. I recommend we start with 3 pilot programs in our flagship stores, test consumer response before full rollout. Marcus Donovan, the head of operations, nodded approvingly. The profit projections look solid. How confident are you in these supplier relationships? Very confident, Kelly said. I've spoken directly with each potential partner in their native language. Cultural understanding goes a long way in building trust. As the meeting concluded with enthusiastic approval for her pilot programs, Kelly felt a surge of satisfaction she hadn't experienced since college. This was what she'd been meant to do. Bridge cultures, facilitate understanding, create connections that benefited everyone involved. Excellent work, Kelly, Brino said as the room emptied. His professional demeanor in meetings still surprised her. Focused, decisive, completely in command. You've exceeded every expectation. Thank you, Kelly said, gathering her materials. I have calls with the Amsterdam suppliers this afternoon, and the Brussels chocolate manufacturer wants to discuss exclusive distribution rights. Brino's smile was proud, and something else, something warmer that made her stomach flutter, despite their agreement to keep things professional at work. How's Nia adjusting to the new schedule? He asked. Kelly's expression softened. Better than I expected. Mrs. Rodriguez is wonderful with her, and having consistent after-school care has actually reduced her anxiety. She knows exactly what to expect each day. Mrs. Elena Rodriguez was a former special education teacher who'd become Nia's afternoon caregiver, a warm, patient woman who understood autism and had quickly become one of Nia's favorite people. The relief of knowing Nia was safe and happy while Kelly worked was worth every penny of the caregiver's salary. That's wonderful, Brino said. And how are you adjusting? Kelly considered the question. 3 weeks ago, she'd been unemployed and desperate. Now she had a corner office, a salary that allowed her to sleep at night without worrying about bills, and work that challenged and excited her in ways she'd forgotten were possible. It feels surreal sometimes, she admitted, like I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream. It's not a dream, Brino said gently. You earned this, Kelly. Every opportunity, every success. This is what happens when someone with your talents gets the chance to use them. Before Kelly could respond, her phone rang. Dr. Chen's office. I should take this, Kelly said, stepping into the hallway. Dr. Chen, is everything okay with Nia? Kelly, I have some wonderful news. Dr. Chen's voice was warm with excitement. Nia's progress has been remarkable these past few weeks. Her anxiety levels are down, she's more communicative, and her fine motor skills have improved dramatically. I think we can reduce her therapy sessions to once a week instead of twice. Kelly felt a wave of relief and pride. That's incredible news. What do you think has made the difference? Stability, Dr. Chen said simply. Consistent routine, reduced financial stress in the household, and I suspect having her sister happy and fulfilled has had a tremendous impact. Children with autism are incredibly sensitive to their caregivers' emotional states. After the call ended, Kelly stood in the hallway processing the news. Nia was thriving. Her sister, who'd struggled with transitions and uncertainty for years, was flourishing in their new normal. Good news? Brino's voice came from behind her. Kelly turned, her face glowing. Nia's therapy can be reduced to once a week. Dr. Chen says she's never seen such improvement in such a short time. That's amazing. Brino stepped closer, his professional mask slipping to reveal genuine joy for her happiness. You should be proud. You made this possible. We made this possible, Kelly corrected, then immediately blushed at the implication of we. They stood in the empty hallway, the corporate atmosphere suddenly charged with unspoken feelings. For 3 weeks, they'd maintained perfect professional boundaries. No personal conversations at work, no lingering glances, no accidental touches that lasted too long. But in this moment, with Kelly's happiness radiating between them, those boundaries felt fragile. Kelly, Brino said softly, I know we agreed to take things slow, but... Kelly Coleman! A sharp voice cut through the moment. They turned to see Vivian Pierce, the company's head of human resources, approaching with a concerned expression and a manila folder in her hands. Ms. Pierce, Kelly said, immediately shifting back to professional mode. Is there something I can help you with? I need to speak with you about some concerns that have been brought to my attention, Vivian said, her gaze shifting meaningfully between Kelly and Brino. Perhaps we could meet in my office. Kelly's stomach dropped. She'd been dreading this moment. the inevitable office politics, the whispers about the unemployed hotel maid who'd somehow landed an executive position. Of course, Kelly said, her voice steady despite the anxiety clawing at her chest. As they walked toward the HR office, Kelly caught Brino's concerned look. She gave him a small nod. She could handle this. She had to handle this. In Vivian's sterile office, Kelly sat across from the HR director and waited for the blow to fall. "Kelly, you've been with us for 3 weeks now," Vivian began, opening the folder, "and while your work has been adequate, there have been some questions raised about your qualifications for this position." "What kind of questions?" Kelly asked, though she suspected she knew. "Several employees have expressed concern about the circumstances of your hiring, the speed of the process, the lack of a traditional interview panel, your previous employment history." Vivian's tone was carefully neutral, but Kelly heard the implication clearly. "I see," Kelly said. "And what specific concerns do you have about my performance?" "Your performance has been fine," Vivian admitted reluctantly. "But there are protocols, Kelly, procedures that ensure fairness and prevent any appearance of impropriety." Kelly felt her carefully constructed new world beginning to shake. The whispers had started, the assumptions were being made, and her relationship with Brino, professional though it had been, was casting shadows over everything she'd worked to build. "What are you suggesting?" Kelly asked. "I think it would be best if we conducted a proper review of your position," Vivian said. "Interview other candidates, ensure we've followed proper hiring procedures. In the meantime, perhaps you could return to a more appropriate role within the company." Kelly stared at the woman across from her, understanding with crystal clarity that all her fears were coming true. Her success was being questioned, her integrity challenged, her relationship with Brino used as a weapon against her professional credibility. "I understand," Kelly said quietly, standing up. "I'll need some time to consider your recommendations." As Kelly walked back to her office, her mind raced with the terrible familiarity of this moment. Once again, just when things seemed to be working out, the ground was shifting beneath her feet. But this time she realized with growing determination she wasn't the same woman who'd accepted defeat quietly. This time, she was going to fight. Kelly sat in her car outside Whitaker's Market headquarters at 6 a.m., staring at the building where she'd spent the happiest 3 weeks of her professional life. In her briefcase were 2 folders, one containing her resignation letter, carefully worded and professional. The other held something that had taken her all night to prepare, a comprehensive presentation documenting every aspect of her work, every successful negotiation, every innovative solution she'd brought to the company. She'd barely slept, alternating between fury and devastation. The little girl inside her whispered familiar refrains. "You don't belong here. You were fooling yourself. People like you don't get happy endings." But Nia's voice was stronger. "Some things are worth the risk." Kelly's phone buzzed with a text from Brino. "Whatever happened yesterday, we'll figure it out together. You belong here, Kelly. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She stared at the message, her chest tight with emotion. He believed in her. Nia believed in her. The question was whether she believed in herself enough to fight. Kelly chose the second folder. Inside the building, she walked straight to the conference room where the executive team held their Monday morning meetings. Through the glass walls, she could see them gathering. Marcus Donovan, Vivian Pierce, 3 other department heads, and Brino at the head of the table. Kelly knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. "Kelly," Brino said, surprise and relief flooding his voice. "I wasn't sure you'd—" "I need to say something," Kelly interrupted, her voice carrying the controlled intensity she'd perfected during sleepless nights caring for a distressed Nia. "To all of you." Vivian Pierce's expression was carefully neutral. "Kelly, if this is about our conversation yesterday, perhaps we should meet privately." "No," Kelly said firmly, moving to the front of the room. "What was said yesterday affects everyone in this room, everyone in this company. So everyone needs to hear my response." She opened her laptop and connected it to the room's presentation screen, her hands steady despite the stakes. 3 weeks ago, I was hired as Director of International Development. Yesterday, my qualifications and the circumstances of my hiring were called into question. Kelly's voice carried clearly through the room. "I'm here to address those questions directly." The first slide appeared on the screen. Kelly Coleman, Qualifications and Performance Review. "I have a bachelor's degree in linguistics from the University of Washington, graduating summa cum laude. I'm certified in professional translation in 4 languages." I spent 2 years working with international exchange students before family circumstances required me to change career paths. Kelly clicked to the next slide, showing her work from the past 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, I've identified and established preliminary relationships with 12 potential European suppliers. I've negotiated terms that project a 43% profit margin on specialty imports. I've created cultural training materials for customer service staff and developed marketing strategies that account for cultural preferences in our diverse Seattle market. Marcus Donovan leaned forward, studying the financial projections. Kelly caught his impressed expression and continued. The Dutch cheese supplier I connected with has offered us exclusive Pacific Northwest distribution rights. The Belgian chocolate manufacturer wants to create a custom product line for Whitaker's markets. These aren't theoretical opportunities. These are real partnerships I've built through my language skills, cultural knowledge, and professional expertise. Kelly clicked to her final slide, a photo of herself at her college graduation, surrounded by family including a younger Nia. I didn't get this job because of my relationship with Mr. Whitaker. I got this job because I'm qualified for it, and I didn't pursue a relationship with Mr. Whitaker because of his position. I've been running from it despite his position. She turned to face Breno directly, her voice softer but no less determined. I've spent 3 years believing I didn't deserve good things, believing that my circumstances, being a caregiver, having financial struggles, coming from a working-class background, meant I should be grateful for whatever scraps life threw my way. But that's not true. Kelly's voice grew stronger, filling the room with quiet power. I deserve this job because I excel at it. I deserve respect because I've earned it. And I deserve love because I'm worthy of it, not in spite of my circumstances, but because of who I am, someone who fights for the people she cares about, who works harder than anyone should have to, who builds bridges instead of walls. The room was completely silent. Vivian Pierce looked uncomfortable. Marcus Donovan was reviewing Kelly's financial projections with obvious interest, and Breno was staring at her with an expression of pure admiration. So here's what's going to happen, Kelly continued. I'm going to keep doing this job at the highest level possible. I'm going to make this company money while treating people with dignity and respect. And I'm going to do it without apologizing for who I am or where I came from. She turned to Vivian Pierce directly. If you want to review my position, review my performance. Interview other candidates if you want, but make sure they have my qualifications, my language skills, my track record of results. Judge me on my work, not on your assumptions about my background or my personal life. Kelly closed her laptop and gathered her materials. I have calls with suppliers in Amsterdam at 9 a.m. The Brussels chocolate meeting is at 2. Both could result in 6-figure revenue streams for this company. If anyone has questions about my qualifications to handle those calls, I suggest you sit in and observe. As Kelly walked toward the door, Breno's voice stopped her. Kelly, wait. She turned back, her heart pounding but her expression composed. For the record, Breno said, his green eyes holding hers across the room, everything you just said, that's exactly why I'm falling in love with you. Your strength, your integrity, your refusal to accept less than you deserve. Those aren't obstacles to overcome. They're the qualities that make you extraordinary. Kelly felt tears threaten, but her voice remained steady. Then stop falling, she said softly, and just love me, all of me. The struggles and the strength, the fears and the determination, because I'm done pretending to be smaller than I am to make other people comfortable. The silence in the room was deafening. Then Marcus Donovan cleared his throat. I move to table any review of Ms. Coleman's position pending completion of her current projects, he said. Those profit projections speak for themselves. Seconded, came another voice from around the table. Vivian Pierce looked around the room, recognizing defeat. Motion carried, she said reluctantly. As Kelly left the conference room, she felt something she'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do, with someone who loved her exactly as she was. For the first time in her life, Kelly Coleman was fighting for her happiness instead of just surviving it, and she was winning. 18 months later, Kelly stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her new office, watching the Seattle skyline paint itself in shades of amber and rose as the sun set over Elliott Bay. The office was larger now. She'd been promoted to Vice President of International Operations 6 months ago, when her European partnerships had exceeded all projections by 200%. The walls were decorated with cultural artifacts from her business travels, a hand-painted tile from Portugal, a small sculpture from Amsterdam, photographs of her meeting with suppliers in Belgium and France, but her favorite decoration sat on her desk, a framed digital artwork that Naya had created, depicting two figures standing together against a backdrop of swirling colors. One figure was clearly Kelly, complete with glasses and professional attire. The other was unmistakably Breno, his green eyes somehow captured perfectly in digital brushstrokes. At the bottom, in Nia's careful lettering, "Love makes everything possible." "Working late again?" Breno's voice came from the doorway, warm with affection and gentle teasing. Kelly turned to find him leaning against the frame, still wearing his suit from his own day of meetings, but with his tie loosened and his hair slightly mussed. Even after all this time, the sight of him still made her heart skip. "The Tokyo expansion proposal needs to be perfect," Kelly said, gesturing to the documents spread across her desk. "If we get this right, we'll be the first American grocery chain to successfully integrate authentic Japanese specialty foods into mainstream markets." Breno crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "It will be perfect because you're handling it. But right now we have somewhere to be." Kelly melted into his embrace, still amazed that this was her life. "The gallery opening. I know. I just need 5 more minutes to—" "Kelly," Breno said softly, turning her to face him, "Taryn's first solo exhibition is tonight. Your best friend is about to achieve her dream. The Tokyo proposal can wait until tomorrow." Kelly's expression softened. Taryn, her Taryn, had finally found her artistic voice again after the divorce. The past year had been a journey of rebuilding their friendship, learning to support each other through different kinds of struggles. When Taryn had called 2 months ago, crying with joy about the gallery opportunity, Kelly had been the first person she'd wanted to tell. "You're right," Kelly said, reaching for her purse. "Let's go celebrate." The gallery was buzzing with energy when they arrived. Kelly spotted Taryn immediately, radiant in a flowing emerald dress that complemented her wavy hair, which she wore loose and confident. She was speaking animatedly with a couple who were clearly interested in purchasing one of her pieces. "Kelly!" Taryn's face lit up when she saw them approaching. "You made it!" "I wouldn't miss this for the world," Kelly said, pulling her friend into a tight hug. "Taryn, this is incredible. Your work is stunning." And it was. Taryn's paintings captured emotion in ways that made Kelly's chest tight with recognition. Swirls of color that seemed to embody hope emerging from darkness, abstract figures reaching toward light, pieces that spoke to anyone who'd ever had to rebuild themselves from scratch. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself," Taryn whispered in Kelly's ear during their embrace. "Thank you for teaching me that friendship isn't about perfection," Kelly whispered back. "It's about showing up." As they separated, Kelly caught sight of a familiar figure near the refreshment table. Mrs. Rodriguez was there with Nia, who looked stunning in a midnight blue dress that brought out her artistic sensibilities. At 17 now, Nia had grown into her own quiet confidence. Her autism no longer something that defined her limitations, but rather part of what made her perspective unique and valuable. "Kelly," Nia approached with a bright smile, holding a small canvas. "I made something for you." Kelly took the painting, a smaller version of the office artwork, but this one showed 3 figures instead of 2. Kelly, Breno, and in the center, Nia herself, all connected by flowing lines of gold and silver. "It's called Family," Nia said simply. "Mrs. Rodriguez helped me stretch the canvas." Kelly's eyes filled with tears. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." "Speaking of family," Breno said, his voice slightly nervous as he reached into his jacket pocket, "there's something I've been wanting to ask." Kelly's breath caught as Breno dropped to one knee in the middle of the gallery, pulling out a small velvet box. The conversations around them gradually quieted as people began to notice what was happening. "Kelly Amara Coleman," Breno said, his green eyes bright with tears and laughter and love. "You've taught me that real strength isn't about having power over your circumstances. It's about choosing love despite them. You've shown me that success means nothing if you're not sharing it with someone who challenges you to be better." Kelly's hands flew to her mouth, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "You make me want to build something beautiful in this world," Breno continued. "Not just businesses or profits, but a life filled with purpose and partnership and the kind of love that makes everything else possible." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, not ostentatious but elegant and timeless, with a center stone that caught the gallery lights like captured starlight. "Will you marry me, Kelly? Will you build that beautiful life with me?" Kelly looked around the gallery, at Taryn beaming with joy at Nia practically bouncing with excitement, at Mrs. Rodriguez wiping away tears, at the crowd of strangers who'd become invested in this moment. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from desperate hotel maid to successful executive, from someone who survived to someone who thrived. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, of course, yes." The gallery erupted in applause as Breno slipped the ring onto her finger and swept her into a kiss that tasted like dreams fulfilled and promises kept. Later, as the four of them, Kelly, Breno, Nia, and Mrs. Rodriguez, sat around the kitchen table in Kelly and Breno's new house in Queen Anne, sharing take-out Chinese food and champagne, sparkling cider for Nia, Kelly looked around at her chosen family and felt complete in a way she'd never imagined possible. "So," Nia said, dipping a spring roll in sweet and sour sauce, "when's the wedding?" "We haven't even talked about that yet," Kelly laughed. "Soon," Breno said, his hand finding Kelly's across the table. "I don't want to wait long to make this official." "What about a destination wedding?" Mrs. Rodriguez suggested. "Somewhere beautiful, that means something to both of you." "Amsterdam," Kelly and Breno said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. "Where you learned Dutch," Breno said softly. "Where we first connected," Kelly agreed. "Amsterdam it is," Nia declared with the authority of someone whose opinion mattered deeply in all family decisions. As the evening wound down and Mrs. Rodriguez took Nia home, to the beautiful two-bedroom apartment Kelly had been able to rent for them in a safe neighborhood with excellent schools, Kelly and Breno sat on their back porch, looking out at the city lights below. "Do you ever think about that first day at the hotel?" Breno asked, his arm around Kelly as she leaned against his chest. "Every day," Kelly said. "I think about how terrified I was of wanting something I thought I couldn't have. And now?" Kelly held up her left hand, admiring how the ring caught the porch light. "Now I know that the things worth having are worth fighting for, and I know that I deserve to fight for them." "What would you tell that woman if you could go back and talk to her?" Kelly was quiet for a moment, thinking about the exhausted, overwhelmed, beautiful woman who'd answered a phone call in Dutch and changed everything. "I'd tell her that love isn't about finding someone who can solve your problems," Kelly said finally. "It's about finding someone who wants to face life's challenges alongside you, someone who sees your strength, not your struggles." "And I'd tell her," Breno said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, "that she's about to discover she's capable of more than she ever imagined, that her capacity for love, for Nia, for her work, for herself, is going to transform not just her own life, but everyone around her." Kelly turned in his arms to look at him. "Do you think she'd believe us?" "Eventually," Breno said with a smile. "She's pretty stubborn, but she's also pretty amazing." As they sat together in comfortable silence, Kelly thought about the Instagram post she'd shared earlier that evening, a photo of her and Breno at the gallery, with the caption, "Sometimes the best things come from the moments when you finally stop running from happiness and start running toward it." The comments had been overwhelmingly positive, filled with heart emojis and congratulations from friends, colleagues, and even some of her international business contacts, who'd become genuine friends over the months of partnership. But her favorite comment was from Nia, "Proud of you for choosing love." Kelly's phone buzzed with one more notification, a text from Taryn. "Thank you for showing me what it looks like to fight for your dreams and win. I love you, friend." Kelly smiled, typing back, "I love you too. Proud of you for building something beautiful from the pieces." As she put her phone away, Kelly realized that this was what happiness actually felt like. Not the absence of challenges, but the presence of people who made those challenges worth facing. Not the elimination of uncertainty, but the courage to embrace it with someone whose love felt like home. "Ready to go inside?" Breno asked as the Seattle night grew cooler around them. "Ready," Kelly said, taking his hand as they stood together. But before they went in, Kelly paused for one last look at the city spread out below them. The city where she'd cleaned hotel floors and answered phones in Dutch, where she'd struggled and survived and finally learned to thrive. "Thank you," she whispered to the night, to the universe, to whatever forces had conspired to bring her to this moment. Then she followed her fiancé inside, to the life they were building together, one beautiful day at a time. In the distance, the Seattle skyline glittered like scattered diamonds, and somewhere in the city, dreams were being born, and love was being discovered, and second chances were being seized by people brave enough to believe they deserved them, just like Kelly had learned to believe, just like she would teach others to believe, through her work, through her love, through the simple but radical act of living authentically and refusing to settle for less than she was worth. The story that had begun with a Dutch phone call had become something far more beautiful. A love story, a success story, but most importantly, a story about learning to see yourself as worthy of all the good things life has to offer. And that story was just beginning. RacismStories, what would you risk for a chance at authentic love? Have you ever discovered that your greatest struggles prepared you for your most beautiful opportunities? Your participation in this channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.